Chapter 543. Their time flowed together. It was the Mid-Autumn Festival again. Every year there was something new. Or it could be said that there was nothing new every year. There was no telling if it was because Lu Qingdi was getting on in years, but Lu Qingdi seemed to prefer the warmth of home, compared to the banquet in the palace. Therefore he continued the habit of the first 2 or 3 years. During the long vacation, except for those who had to stick to their positions, the rest of the people went back to their own homes. Speaking of which, Jingwan spent the first Mid-Autumn Festival in the Luo family after she came to the capital. It was very warm and normal. This year, they spent the Mid-Autumn Festival in Jiangnan. It was just the two of them, so they could do whatever they wanted. Last year, they spent the Mid-Autumn Festival in the capital, but they did not pay much attention to the people in the capital. This year, they were going to the palace to spend the Mid-Autumn Festival. Speaking of which, although it was a family banquet, it was a palace banquet after all. It was far from a normal family banquet. However, compared with the outside world, the palace was naturally more sophisticated. Apart from the lanterns made by the Ministry of Internal Affairs, the palaces also used all kinds of means. After all, if one came out first, he or she would be rewarded. In fact, the reward was not the most important thing. The most important thing was that it could attract Lu Qingdi's attention. Whether it was the concubines or those little princes and princesses, they were all very keen on this. If the concubines were noticed, they might get favor. If the princes and princesses were noticed, they might get status. Jingwan let out a silent sigh. There was competition everywhere. In fact, because she had the memories of another life, even though she knew that under the feudal dynasty, a person's likes and dislikes could determine the status of many people, she still felt that it was very unbelievable when she experienced it personally. Although this was the most obvious manifestation of this point, it actually existed in the noble families and even ordinary people. As long as one could gain the favor of the head of the family, then even a kitten or a dog could live a better life than a living person. However, it didn't matter how others fought for her. She had a big backer, so she only needed to watch from the sidelines. When necessary, she could secretly watch the show. And the result of those people fighting for her favor by all means. Wasn't it just convenient for others? The colorful lanterns were a feast for the eyes. It really confirmed the saying that only you can think of it, no one else can't do it. Compared to her previous life, some of the craftsmanship was weaker and could not be done. However, in Jingwan's opinion, there were many things that were better. After hanging up the lanterns everywhere, Jingwan and Li Hongyuan strolled around leisurely. Perhaps it was because she was pregnant. Jingwan was particularly fond of lanterns with chubby dolls painted on them. Sometimes, when she looked at them and fiddled with them with her fingers, she would even smile unconsciously. In other people's eyes, just looking at Jingwan, that was absolutely tender and affectionate, they would feel warmth in their hearts. However, the dark-faced demon behind Jin Qinhuang, Fei, was really too much of a killjoy. That unapproachable appearance made people unconsciously turn around when they were still a few zhang away, avoiding them as far as possible. Jin Qinhuang loved Jin Qinhuang Fei. This could be said to be a well-known consensus. However, sometimes Jin Qinhuang's performance seemed to be very contradictory, such as now. According to common sense, Jin Qinhuang Fei was so happy. Shouldn't Jin Qinhuang also be happy? Why did it seem like he was quite unhappy? Just like how Jin Qinhuang Fei put on a green hat for him. Well, this possibility did not exist. Not to mention that Jin Qinhuang was almost inseparable from Jin Qinhuang Fei. Jin Qinhuang Fei having an affair in Jin Qinhuang Fu was really the biggest joke in the world. No matter how powerless the king of hell was, how could he not control his own Wang Fu? Therefore, it could be said that the king of hell's thoughts were different from the rest. It was treacherous and unpredictable. If you couldn't guess, it was best not to guess blindly. Guessing back and forth, you could only let yourself get tangled up and become a mess of hemp rope. Jingwan could actually feel someone's displeasure. However, except for the forbidden area that absolutely could not be touched, Jingwan had nothing to fear most of the time. He didn't like this piece of meat in her belly, but she was now closely connected to this piece of meat. Therefore, even if she deliberately threw a small tantrum, he was also helpless and could only compromise in the end. Li Hongyuan looked at Jingwan's smiling mischief. Sure enough, the black face did not last long. After that, Li Hongyuan completely let Jingwan do whatever she wanted. Although one was smiling warmly and the other was serious in speech and manner, the atmosphere between the two people was exceptionally harmonious. There was no room for a third person to intervene. The people who followed and served all retreated one zhang away. This kind of atmosphere, who knew how many people were envious and jealous? Although from time to time, the topic of Jin Qinhuang Fei's jealousy would be stirred up. Although many people harbored malice and waited for Jin Qinhuang Fei to fall from grace, in reality, the former had no effect on her. As for the latter, didn't you see that she was already 2 to 3 months pregnant? Her complexion was the same as before she was pregnant, and it even made people feel that she seemed to have become more beautiful. In all likelihood, there was still no one else by Jin Qinhuang Fei's side. Otherwise, even if she was a Tongfang, Jin Qinhuang Fei's state would not be like this. When a man had other women by his side, as a wife, no matter how clear and thorough she could see, it was impossible to be completely unaffected. Especially during pregnancy, this person was easily fragile, and easy to let her imagination run wild. There was a world of difference between being in a good state and pretending to be in a good state. Once, twice, thrice, even 4 times, they all wanted to see how long she could be arrogant for. However, until now they still couldn't see her as a joke. Jingwan didn't show any signs of falling from grace, causing these people to lose their temper first. It was better to take care of yourself and not care so much about others. In the end, other than a stomach full of anger, there was still a stomach full of anger that had nowhere to vent. Therefore, what the eye doesn't see, the heart doesn't feel vexed. When they see, they consciously avoid it. The imperial palace was so big, there were many places with lanterns. Wanting to take a look at it was basically something that couldn't be done in a short period of time. After looking at about 1/10 of it, Jingwan lost interest. Moreover, her exercise today was enough. For the first 3 months, it was better to take it easy. It was true that there were many kinds of lanterns in the imperial palace, but in the end, there was a lack of human touch. There was neither the liveliness of the flower street, nor the warmth of each household. The banquet was also held in the imperial garden. Li Hongyuan took Jingwan to a relatively quiet place. Because it was not in the way, no one would easily come over. In addition, there were people guarding by the side, so he didn't have any scruples to hold Jingwan in his arms. Jingwan also quietly leaned in Li Hongyuan's arms, looking at the people coming and going not far away. The gorgeous imperial concubines, the exquisite and gorgeous princes and princesses, the dignified and virtuous princesses, and the elegant princes and princesses. No matter how she looked at it, it was fake. Even if she used her toes to think, she knew that most of these people had a fake face and pretended to be polite to others. Of course, Jingwan was also very clear that all kinds of situations were not necessarily out of their hearts. As the saying goes, one can't help oneself. She was safe because she had a shelter. The man beside her blocked all the wind and rain for her, so she could be at ease in a corner. Otherwise, she might have become one of them. Therefore, she was not qualified to judge others. After looking for a while, Jingwan yawned slightly. After she was pregnant, she still had some symptoms. For example, compared to before, she was more sleepy. Take a rest. It's still early for the banquet. Li Hongyuan was already used to accompanying her. So whenever something happened to Jingwan, he would always be the first to notice. Jingwan did not make a sound, as if she had fallen asleep in this very short time. Then, before Li Hongyuan said anything, Nanny Gong had already brought a cloak. In such a day, although it was still a little hot in the day, the wind at night was already a little cold. Jingwan was awakened by a noise. She sleepily rubbed her eyes. What's wrong? 2 little girls are just fighting. Don't pay attention to it. Let's go to another place and continue to sleep for a while. It's okay. I'm actually not that sleepy. Jingwan leaned against him to wake herself up, and then sat up straight. Then, Jingwan realized that the so-called little girls fighting seemed to be 2 little princesses. But thinking about it, tonight was the emperor's family banquet. The people who rushed to fight here could not be little palace maids. Other than the little princesses, it could only be the little princesses of the various manors. What's going on? Let's go and take a look. Li Hongyuan actually noticed that Jingwan's curiosity had been a little strong recently, but he didn't stop her. With him guarding, even if there were many people, others had to make way for him. He didn't have to worry about bumping into them. After passing by, the two little princesses were still crying loudly. However, Jingwan's eyes flashed with confusion. What? This did not seem to be a matter of two people. There were clearly 4 people involved. Lu Qingdi had more sons than daughters. Noble consort Su's Princess Minxiang was ranked 5th, and there was a slight age gap between her and the 6th princess. The 6th princess was not even 14 years old, and the 7th princess was only half a year younger than her. At this moment, the two of them were disheveled, their hair was messy, and their eyes were spitting fire as they glared at each other. Obviously, they were the main characters of the fight. Jingwan stood aside and listened to them. She basically knew the cause and effect. Only could express her mood. The 5th princess was married. Although the status of the remaining princesses was different because of their respective mothers, the difference was not very big. However, no matter how small the difference was still the difference. They were not favored, and the position of concubine was absolutely different from that of the little nobles below. The mothers of the 6th princess and the 7th princess were both concubines. Without the 5th princess's suppression, of course, now that noble consort Su had fallen from the throne and Prince Rui had been demoted to a concubine, even if the 5th princess was still in the palace, she could not suppress the other princesses. Now the 2 princesses were the leaders. They each had their own little followers. They were the ones who fought, but the reason was their little followers. It was just that the little princess below wanted to grab 2 fruit and vegetable lanterns. Grapefruit lanterns, pumpkin lanterns, watermelon lanterns, orange lanterns, apple lanterns, and so on were relatively popular among the people. It was rare for the noble families to see them. The reason why the Luo family had them was that Luo Peishan didn't mind. He just wanted to give the younger generation something to have fun with. However, many high officials and nobles minded it very much. They thought it was beneath their dignity to play with those things that were only for the poor. One of the little princess's mother came from a small family. She was sent to the summer palace by the people below. Then, she was chosen by Lu Qingdi and brought back to the palace. Those fruit and vegetable lanterns were happy memories of her childhood, so she made 2 for her daughter on a whim. She was skillful and the lanterns she made were delicate enough. Things that were not rare among the people were rare in the palace because they had never seen them before. This attracted the peeping of others. As soon as she grabbed the lanterns, she attracted the big sister of the other party. The 6th princess slapped the little princess who snatched the lanterns. "You're so young and you don't learn good things. Is this what your mother taught you?" Speaking of which, it was not necessarily to seek justice for her little follower. It was purely because the person she protected was robbed. How could she save face? Especially when the other party was intimate with her dead teammate. She was a little girl. After being beaten, she would definitely cry. Moreover, the people in the palace were all shrewd. Although she was young, her lethality was definitely not small. Moreover, she knew the essence of "the child who cries gets meat to eat." As soon as she cried, the people who supported her came. In the eyes of the 7th princess, this good sister was not beating her little follower, but herself. She was so angry that if she said something wrong, she would directly beat her up. Although the palace servants had pulled her away at the fastest speed, it still caused the current situation. "It's good to be young. You're so energetic," Jingwan said with a sigh. "From Wanwan's words, you think you're old?" Li Hongyuan's eyes were a little deep. "Yes, my heart is old." Obviously, Jingwan did not notice the change in her husband at all. According to Wanwan, physically speaking, "I'm 8 years older than you. Mentally speaking." Ha! This meaningful "ha" made Jingwan, whose IQ was a little damaged, instantly react. She quivered. What was that? In her previous life, she had died in her 20s, while the person beside her was in his 40s. Moreover, experience was the key factor that determined a person's psychological maturity. She had experienced a lot, but the other person might have had more than 70 or 80 years of experience compared to others. Thinking about it this way, She was simply a little seedling, okay? Wan is disdaining your husband for being old. Li Hongyuan seemed a little lonely and sad. Jingwan really wanted to curse out loud. This sad look was even more unbearable than going crazy. Because even if she went crazy, her nerves had been tempered thousands of times, and her endurance was very high. Now that she suddenly changed her style, it was very strange, okay? Other people did not care, but when the living king of hell suddenly acted like this, it would only make people's hearts tremble for no reason. It was the precursor of a big move. Li Hongyuan saw Jingwan looking at him nervously, as if she was facing a great enemy. He smiled, like a gorgeous and magnificent purple peony blooming. Don't be too bewitching. Li Hongyuan raised his hand and gently rubbed his finger on Jingwan's face. Your husband can't do anything to you now, but we can put it on the account and slowly settle it in the future. How many debts have you put on me? Jingwan asked subconsciously. Wan, do you want to know? Your husband can count it for you one by one. Even 3 times a day is not a problem. No need. Jingwan immediately refused. Counting how many knives were hanging over her head. Wasn't that looking for abuse? Li Hongyuan showed a slightly regretful expression, missing the chance to add another debt. Although the two people deliberately lowered their voices from beginning to end, and did not make any intimate movements, most people's attention was on the two valiant princesses. However, there were still some people who noticed them. Scoundrel, do you have to be so arrogant and show off your affection? Are you deliberately trying to make people jealous? Or jealous? Or jealous? Okay, you win. The atmosphere was obviously sweet, but their hearts were filled with sour bubbles. Did Jin Qinhuang, Fei really cultivate 8 lifetimes of good fortune? Then what about them? Did they create 8 lifetimes of evil? When the younger sisters were in a conflict, the ordinary concubines could not intervene. The elders who could intervene were not present, so only the elder brothers and sisters-in-law had gone out. They did not have a direct elder brother. As for the others, they did not seem to be willing to pay attention to them. After all, if this kind of thing was not handled well, they would not be able to gain any benefits and would also be stained with blood. Although the mothers of the 6th princess and 7th princess were not favored, but their maternal families still had some power. For no reason, no one was willing to make another enemy at this time. The 6th princess and 7th princess were obviously still angry, and did not consider the consequences. No one spoke, but it looked like they were going to fight again. Sure enough, in the next moment, they broke away from the palace servants who were holding them back and threw themselves at the other side. Are you really addicted to fighting? Li Hongyuan's tone was slightly cold as he opened his mouth. The two who were fighting immediately retreated, and looked in the direction of the sound source in horror. It really was 6th Imperial brother. The two people's faces turned white. Jingwan knew that her husband was a great deterrent to many people, but these princesses were scared like this. It seemed a bit unreasonable. Could it be that this old cucumber-painted green man had even taught these little girls a lesson? Think about it, if he really taught them a lesson, it was before he left the palace. That was 8 or 9 years ago. The 6th princess and 7th princess were only a few years old. Could this man really do it? Li Hongyuan glanced at Jingwan. He was very clear about what she was thinking and squeezed her hand. In his wife's heart, was he such a bad person? To tell the truth, these people were afraid of him, especially the younger ones. It could be said that when they were disobedient, their mothers used his reputation to scare them. Over time, it became a conditioned fear. Other than this, he really couldn't think of any other possibility. After all, for these younger brothers and sisters, Li Hongyuan completely couldn't distinguish who was who. The number of interactions was 0. Take all 4 of them back, ground them for 6 months, forfeit their salary for half a year. Hire 2 instructors for them, and properly learn the rules. Li Hongyuan lightly said. He didn't ask whether the little girl who was robbed at the beginning was innocent or not. Li Hongyuan didn't have the mind to be fair and just. When these words came out, the princesses all trembled, but none of them pleaded. The 2 younger ones even suppressed their voices, and didn't dare to cry loudly. After being sent back by their palace servants, the others glanced at Jin Qinhuang, and went to do what they should do. Others didn't want to offend people, but Jin Qinhuang was completely unafraid. When everyone dispersed, Jingwan poked Li Hongyuan's waist. Our Jin Qinhuang also has the effect of curing children crying at night? Jingwan, who reacted half a beat slower, obviously already understood and ridiculed. After the little bastard in your belly is born, Wanwan can personally see if this husband has this effect. Jingwan once again lit a candle for the treasure in her belly. Being Li Hongyuan's child was definitely a very sad thing. I remember that year when I first entered the capital, the younger brothers and sisters at home also fought over the lanterns. However, the elders were happily watching from the side. And that group of younger ones, after the fight, went back to wash and reconciled in a flash. Don't compare with the imperial family in everything. Jingwan smiled. That's right, the more one compared, the more depressed one would be. In the inner palace, there wasn't much true innocence. Not long after, several of the empresses in the inner palace appeared. It looked like they were preparing to worship the moon. However, not only did the empress appear, imperial concubine Su also appeared. Jingwan was really surprised. However, the empress still looked sickly. It couldn't be helped. The aftereffects of her reincarnation were too strong. She was actually very lucky to still be alive. As for imperial concubine Su, although Emperor Lu Qingdi banned her from entering the Jade Palace, in the end, there was no clear imperial edict. No one knew why Emperor Lu Qingdi allowed her to come out today. However, the current only imperial concubine Qin didn't seem to have changed. Other than her, imperial concubine Wei Xian was also very different from the first time she saw them. It had only been a short time. If it wasn't for their identities being obvious, it was likely that it would be impossible to connect them now with their former selves. The imperial palace was indeed the most nurturing and also the most torturous place. When they were favored, they could be bright and beautiful. When they were out of favor, they would fall into the dust. Everything was ready. Jingwan wanted to go over and worship the moon with the others. Li Hongyuan directly stopped her. No need. And Jingwan was a little confused. Even if imperial concubine Su was here, she wouldn't dare to do anything in public. Moreover, she could bring Mama Gong with her. The others also knew that she was special now and wouldn't go near her for no reason. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/146922288. HTML chapter error. Click here to report. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com mobile version reading website, mbicken.com. Chapter 544. Something's not right tonight. Wanwan, don't leave my side. Li Hongyuan said solemnly. Jingwan naturally listened to him. What's wrong? I don't know for now. It doesn't feel good. Intuition was a mysterious thing. However, Jingwan thought of what he had experienced. Even if she ignored this point, she still chose to believe him unconditionally. Therefore, when everyone else moved closer to the temporarily built moon worship platform, Jingwan still stood beside Li Hongyuan and didn't move. The others saw this but didn't say anything. He was the living king of hell. Now his position in the emperor's heart had risen to another level. It was absolutely unreachable. To put it bluntly, the emperor almost worshipped him like an ancestor. Others couldn't afford to offend him. His wife was precious now. Naturally, she would listen to whatever he said. Many people thought sarcastically. Everyone had different lives. What could they do? They weren't the imperial noble consort's children. Jingwan didn't say anything. However, she saw that some people were mocking her husband in their hearts. It wasn't easy for him to have an offspring at 25 years old. Naturally, he had to be careful in everything. He used to be bold, but now he was as timid as a mouse. Jingwan lowered her eyes. To put it bluntly, if something happened to her and she had an abortion, this person probably wouldn't frown for the child. His anger would only be because she was hurt. Because of this deep affection, Jingwan was occasionally a little scared. She was worried that she couldn't give the other party the same love, even though love couldn't be measured. When she wasn't sure, She was worried about gains and losses. When she got everything, she could still have some small problems. Jingwan sometimes despised herself. Because he didn't need her to do anything, Jingwan didn't know to what extent she could do for him. However, she would love him with all her heart. However, there was actually a problem. Because she had received the best, most complete love, if one day, the person who gave her this love wanted to take it back or make it incomplete, anyone would probably go crazy. So when that time came, Jingwan reckoned that she would really kill him. On the other hand, Jingwan would never allow anyone to interfere. She would kill anyone who tried to sabotage her relationship. Jingwan suddenly turned her head to look at her husband. At this moment, she suddenly understood. What's wrong? Li Hongyuan was slightly puzzled. Jingwan shook her head. She suddenly understood why her husband was so hostile towards Chen Jungmin and Sun Yilin, and wanted to kill them directly several times. It was because they had feelings for her and coveted her. Even if they were not a threat, he could not tolerate it. For example, if it were some outstanding woman who had deep feelings for her husband and could not forget him, her reaction would definitely not be any better. The most typical example was Ruan Fengfei. However, when she married her husband, Ruan Fengfei was completely out of the picture. She had not opened her heart to him yet. Her hatred for Ruan Fengfei directly stemmed from her scheming against her and the Luo family, so she did not have much feelings in this regard. As for the other people who coveted her husband, they all had a strong purpose. Basically, none of them were really targeting him. His love for her gave her a strong confidence. Perhaps she didn't realize at that time, but she actually didn't put them in her eyes at all, because they weren't targeting him, but the worldly possessions he might bring. It didn't arouse her vigilance. If Ruan Fengfei was still here, even if she wasn't single, Jingwan would probably want to kill her. She didn't like her love rival, not because she didn't trust the other party, nor was it because the other party might cause trouble and be dangerous. It was because the other party was thinking about her own person, which she couldn't tolerate. This kind of crazy possessiveness was not because others couldn't touch what belonged to her, but because she loved it to the bone. It was only for one person, and there was no such emotion in anything else. Jingwan suddenly laughed. She seemed to have understood something, and was happy for some reason. According to her husband's identity and status, she would definitely have love rivals in the future. Jingwan believed that at that time, without her husband's coercion, she would take the initiative to deal with it and strangle everything in the cradle. Even if she didn't kill them, she would let them know clearly that if they dared to come, they had to be prepared to die. So what if it would ruin her reputation? Compared to her husband, her reputation was not worth mentioning at all. Are you stupid today? Li Hongyuan reached out and pinched her face. Even if I'm stupid, you still have to treasure me for the rest of your life. Jingwan said without holding back. Li Hongyuan chuckled. He didn't know what his wife had thought through, but he felt that it was a bit different. Because he, Li Hongyuan, was never someone who only gave without asking for anything in return. The stronger his love, the more his wife cared about him. He was still waiting, but he didn't know that this thought had actually come true at this moment. However, if Jingwan didn't say it, he would probably only find out the next time Jingwan made a move. After the moon worship, Lu Qingdi also arrived late. Afterwards, the Empress presided over the distribution of the mooncakes. However, her body wasn't good, so she had to be supported the entire process. It was a kind of sadness. Thinking about the past, her schemes, her ambitions, without a healthy body, everything became empty talk. Qin Shufei was the one who cut the mooncakes. The mooncakes prepared were big enough, and there were a lot of them. However, the emperor's family was not to be trifled with. Therefore, in the end, only a small piece was distributed, and it was gone in 2 or 3 bites. Jingwan felt that the mooncakes tasted good. The banquets in the palace weren't very good, but it didn't mean that the imperial chef's skills were bad. To a certain extent, because there were too many rules and the imperial kitchen was relatively far away, many things no longer tasted the same when they reached the mouth. The imperial chef couldn't do anything about it, but things like mooncakes were different. Therefore, the pastry chef was the one who received the most rewards in the imperial kitchen. Lu Qingdi seemed to be in a good mood today and didn't stick to the rules. He didn't have to sit at his own table. Even the concubines didn't mind sitting at their children's table. For many people, this was a great favor, especially the concubines of the lower ranks. They could only show their faces at the emperor's family banquets. If it was a formal occasion, they wouldn't even have the chance to sit. The only chance they had to sit at the same table with their children was in their own palace, and the children came first. If Lu Qingdi was here, they could only be the person who served the dishes. Jingwan and Li Hongyuan's table was still only the two of them. Their mother wasn't at the table, and the children were in their bellies. It wasn't very lively, but they enjoyed it very much. Jingwan raised her head to look at the sky. There were thin layers of clouds tonight, but at this moment, it didn't cover the light of the full moon hanging in the sky. The surrounding stars were scattered, big and small pearls fell on a jade plate. Tonight is also a good night to admire the moon, Jingwan said softly. Li Hongyuan glanced at it, and made a sound in response. He didn't care whether the moon was beautiful or not. He was just echoing his wife's words. At this time, the chief steward next to Lu Qingdi walked over. Wang Yi Wang Fei, His Majesty wants you two to move to the imperial table. His voice was neither soft nor loud, and his attitude was very respectful. Because of Su Guifei's big secret, Li Hongyuan's attitude towards Lu Qingdi was still not very good. Even though he had been rebellious since he was young, and always opposed Lu Qingdi. Not going. The chief steward's face stiffened, and he cursed Li Hongyuan in his heart. Jingwan smiled. It's the same sitting there. Wang Yi should accompany Fu Huang to drink a cup of wine. The chief steward only wanted to kneel and kowtow to Jingwan. Jin Qian Wang Fei was really too understanding. Li Hongyuan glanced at her, and slowly stood up. It seemed that he had compromised. This husband and wife pair, one playing the good cop, the other playing the bad cop. This double act, was very tacit. Li Hongyuan gave a perfunctory bow, and Lu Qingdi's old face was smiling like a flower. With the lesson from the Dragon Boat Festival, Lu Qingdi was much more amiable to Jingwan this time. Of course, Jingwan was pregnant and the Imperial Gui Fei had given her a protective talisman. Li Hongyuan didn't speak, so Jingwan chatted with Lu Qingdi with a smile. Perhaps she was really in a good mood. Jingwan didn't say anything funny, and Lu Qingdi could also laugh loudly, causing other people to look askance. In their view, the so-called reward was just finding a reason to call Li Hongyuan to the imperial table. It looked like the three of them were a family, and everyone else was superfluous. Their original good mood naturally faded. Especially Su Guifei. She clearly had children and grandchildren, but she was like those concubines who didn't have children, all alone. She lowered her head and seemed to be drinking in depression. But in reality, it was just to cover up the hatred in her eyes that was almost tangible. She had done so much, but in the end, Li Hongyuan, this bastard, was so lucky that his wife got pregnant. And her most outstanding son, the heavens gave him luck, but didn't give him everything. He gave birth to a little girl, and because of this he was demoted to a commoner. She had spent so much effort, and her hands were stained with so much blood, but in the end, she had fallen to this state. How could she not hate or resent? Therefore, the mask that she had worn for decades, the mask that was almost a part of her face, was finally completely torn off. Now, she didn't dare to look at people directly, because with just one look, she could reveal her true feelings. However, with Li Hongyuan's keenness, he was more or less aware of Su Guifei's emotions. He didn't care and didn't even give her a glance. It had to be said that when Luqing Emperor cleaned up the people in the Jade Essence Palace, there were some things that other people didn't know. However, there were no walls in the world that didn't let the wind pass through. Some things could still be traced. For example, everyone present was well aware that Su Guifei and her adopted son had completely shed all pretense of cordiality, because of some things. Jin Qingwang was fine, and other than the title of Guifei, Su Guifei had nothing left. It was obvious that Su Guifei was in the wrong. Speaking of which, during this period of time, the concubines didn't go to the Jade Essence Palace less. To add insult to injury, that was definitely the best show for the women in the imperial harem. It was meaningless to step on those who had no status and no status. That kind of person wasn't worth it at all. Only by stepping on those who were high above and had bullied them before would they feel happy. Su Guifei used to be the most favored in the imperial harem for so many years. It was unknown how many concubines had fallen in her hands. Perhaps because she stood high enough, some of the things she had done before were like eating and drinking, she didn't have any impression of it. For others, a gay friend could be a disaster. Thus, if there was a chance, how could they not take revenge? In a banquet held in the imperial harem, regardless of the nature, singing and dancing were indispensable themes. While chatting with others, he slowly ate his food. From time to time, he would glance at the graceful dance moves of the dancers. Occasionally, he would tilt his head to listen to the melodious music of the singers. Otherwise, the melodious music was just as pleasant to listen to. Although she had watched it many times, there was always something different. In order to avoid being too bored or being nagged by Lu Qingdi, Jingwan watched it very attentively. When she took it seriously, she felt that it was indeed not bad. Lu Qingdi's royal table was definitely more sumptuous than other people's tables at any time. 30 to 40 dishes were relatively few. Today was the Mid-Autumn Festival. Looking at the wave of dishes being served, Jingwan estimated that there would be more than 100 dishes. In the end, the total number of dishes that could enter Lu Qingdi's stomach was 3. That was the extraordinary performance of the imperial kitchen. The rest was all wasted. Many emperors said that the treasury was empty during their reigns. According to such a wasteful way, it would be strange if it wasn't empty. Not to mention that if the emperor changed every meal to 8 dishes and 2 soups, and added snacks or something, the number of people in the imperial harem would decrease gradually. Then the entire imperial harem would save a lot of money every year. Was it wrong for the emperor to have 11 dishes a meal? Don't joke. 7 or 8 people were enough. Unfortunately, the food was also an important symbol of the emperor's identity. Li Hongyuan directly picked up a finger-sized meatball and put it into Jingwan's mouth. Jingwan opened her mouth and ate it. She was too used to it. Looking at it, she knew that it was definitely not the first time. When Jingwan reached out to drink some soup, she realized that there was something wrong with the way people looked at her, especially Lu Qingdi, who was looking at her meaningfully. When she just swallowed the food in her mouth, Jingwan felt a little blocked. She reached out and pinched someone. She forgot about it. Did he also go astray? He obviously did it on purpose. Li Hongyuan's body was basically full of muscles. It was not easy to pinch him. When Jingwan pinched him, it was more like scratching an itch for him. He glanced at her indifferently and added a piece of fish into her bowl. Jingwan's face was indeed much thicker now. However, being stared at by so many people, she still felt a little embarrassed. However, someone was completely unaware of it. He was very happy. If she really stopped him, he would probably attract more attention. Jingwan was quite helpless. She could see that this person was obviously narrow-minded. He was trying to settle accounts. He couldn't do anything to her, so he used this method to draw hatred for her. The world was used to it. It was called public display of affection. The world was reserved and reserved. It was not proper for a husband and wife to hold hands in front of outsiders. It was unconventional, shameless, and even shameless. Moreover, it was always the wife who served the husband. On the other hand, if it was more serious, some people would even ask where the 3 obedience and 4 virtues had gone. Of course, in the eyes of other men, it was indeed improper. However, in the eyes of other women, it was not the case. The accumulated hatred came from them. Tsk. Jingwan lowered her eyes slightly and pretended to be dead. Li Hongyuan put down his chopsticks and drank a cup of wine. His eyes met Lu Qingdi's. Imperial father, why are you looking at me? Lu Qingdi coughed lightly. It was not easy to point it out directly. It's better not to do things that shouldn't be done. Li Hongyuan sneered. Others might want to be reserved. Who was Li Hongyuan? He was the living king of hell, the former devil incarnate. If he couldn't do it, he would do it. Compared to being reserved, he preferred to be direct and violent. I heard that Imperial Father loves Imperial Mother, and is devoted to Imperial Mother. I don't believe that you haven't fed Imperial Mother before. His gaze turned and fell on the others. Don't make a fuss over such a trivial matter. When you have nothing to do, you just watch beauties dance. If you're not satisfied, you can change to something else. staring at us husband and wife. You really have nothing better to do. If you can't stand it, you can do it yourself. This prince doesn't mind at all. Li Hongyuan's peerlessly thick-skinned face didn't blush and his heart didn't skip a beat. However, it made the others who hadn't done anything flustered. Especially Lu Qingdi, who almost choked. He blew his beard and glared at Li Hongyuan. Do you think everyone is like you, evil creature? If you want to be close to your wife, scram back to your own mansion. Close the door and do whatever you want. When you're outside, you have to pay attention to it. Li Hongyuan bluntly mocked. Imperial father doesn't have anyone to accompany you. And you don't allow other couples to be close. It's so unreasonable. Moreover, you don't have anyone to accompany you now. Who caused this? If you don't like me, you can just issue an imperial edict and confine me to the mansion. Do you really think I want to come to the palace? Last year, in the manor, there wasn't a bunch of messy people. You don't know how happy I was. Li Hongyuan spat out knives again. Lu Qingdi was so angry that his liver hurt. His heart choked, and he almost vomited blood. The others were also collectively implicated. They were indiscriminately attacked by Li Hongyuan. They were really innocent. Lu Qingdi trembled and pointed at Li Hongyuan. You evil creature. Will you only be satisfied after I die from anger? Ah. You did it and you don't allow others to talk about it? You're not happy just by looking at her? Li Hongyuan stood up. You're still unhappy. What does your majesty want to do? The atmosphere instantly became hostile. Jingwan was actually fine, but some people's tolerance was not so good. Especially those who were smiling. They were scared to tears. Li Hongyuan seemed to think that he didn't provoke Lu Qingdi enough. I dare to take responsibility for what I do. I'm open and above board. What about you, your majesty? There could have been one more person at this table. With a bang, Lu Qingdi slammed the table, bristling with anger. He looked at Li Hongyuan like an angry lion, but Li Hongyuan was not to be outdone. The father and son looked at each other like enemies. In the end, it was Lu Qingdi who was defeated and deflated. All right, there are some things that I don't want to say to you. Today is the Mid-Autumn Festival. Accompany Fu Huang to have a meal. Don't quarrel with me every time. I'm the emperor, your father. You should leave me some face. Li Hongyuan still wanted to say something, but Jingwan reached out and pulled him. When he looked over, Jingwan gently shook her head. Li Hongyuan looked at him for a moment and didn't speak again. Lu Qingdi saw this and felt sour in his heart. It was said that when you have a wife, you forget your parents. This evil creature was really the typical example. However, he didn't know if it was because he personally took this evil creature out of his mother's womb, but he was born to be at odds with him. When he talked to him, he couldn't get along well with him. Sit down. Lu Qingdi waved his hand. Even if it was for this meal, he didn't want to talk to him anymore. He could do whatever he wanted. He would turn a blind eye and pretend that he didn't see anything. If he talked to him, he didn't know what would happen. Lu Qingdi sometimes wondered what sins he had committed in his previous life to give birth to such an evil creature to go against him. But he was reluctant to punish him. However, Li Hongyuan vaguely mentioned the imperial noble consort's death, so Emperor Lu Qing lost his interest. Li Hongyuan didn't seem to want to compromise, but Jingwan pulled him to sit down. Jingwan's face was a little cautious and a little fearful, but her heart was very calm. She was just wondering what was wrong with this master today, to the extent that he had dragged so many people to be unhappy with him. Obviously, only Jingwan knew that someone had done it on purpose. Therefore, anyone who met him would have to light a candle for him. This episode seemed to have passed just like that. In everyone's hearts, it did not leave too deep of a mark. After all, it was just like how jealousy cursed Jingwan. They were used to it. The first time, the second time, the second time, the second time, the third time, the third time, the third time, they would be numb to it. After the seventh, eighth, and ninth time, they would probably be as indifferent as water. Of course, this was the majority of people. Noble consort Su had a hunchback and a pair of gloomy eyes. When mentioning the imperial noble consort, her eyes were filled with resentment, joy, and fear. She was most worried that this fire would burn her. No matter if it was her or her son. They couldn't endure being disliked by the emperor again. Otherwise, there really wouldn't be any room for a comeback. Perhaps it was because Lu Qingdi had suffered another blow and his spirit had become a little weak. Perhaps he didn't even think about noble consort Su anymore. Digression. https://www.bicon.com/11/11807/147153777. HTML. There is an error in the chapter. Please click here to report. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicon.com. Bikugo mobile reading website, mbicon.com. Chapter 545. Jingwan tilted her head and whispered something in Li Hongyuan's ear. Li Hongyuan put down his wine glass. I think I'll go with you. Jingwan carefully glanced at Lu Qingdi. On the surface, she seemed to be asking for Lu Qingdi's consent, but in fact, she was a little bit mischievous. She wanted to see Lu Qingdi change his face. Lu Qingdi decided to ignore it to the end. Jingwan felt a little regretful. When a subject met the emperor, to prevent himself from being disrespectful, he even drank less water. It was really sad. Jingwan changed her clothes and came out. Her hands were still a little damp after being stained with water. Li Hongyuan stood in the corridor with his hands behind his back. He looked up at the bright moon in the night sky. It was quiet. The flowers and trees outside the corridor formed a beautiful picture. It was beautiful, but it also had a feeling that it could be seen from afar. But when he turned back, he naturally showed a faint smile. The sense of distance suddenly disappeared. Li Hongyuan stretched out his hand to Jingwan. Jingwan put her hand in his palm. Under the moonlight, their foreheads touched, and the tips of their noses touched. It felt so good. Yuan, I don't want to go back. Then I won't go back. Otherwise, I'll go directly out of the palace to the prince's mansion, or go to the lantern market to enjoy the lanterns. If I'm lucky, I might meet the Luo family. Anyway, Li Hongyuan was very clear that as long as he didn't touch the throne, his good father's tolerance for him was so high that it was strange. If he didn't make good use of it, he would feel sorry for himself. I don't think so. Although you have already swept his face clean, you should take it easy. How to put it, someone was so high profile and showed his presence everywhere, but in fact trying to cover up makes it more conspicuous. It was just that not many people knew. How many people were so good at secretly usurping the throne since ancient times? However, how many people had the luck to start over? Thinking about it this way, the acceptance seemed to be higher. What does it matter? Nothing. Li Hongyuan's voice stopped abruptly. He looked at the place where the banquet was set up in the imperial garden, and narrowed his eyes slightly. His intuition was right. However, they actually played this trick. Li Hongyuan sneered. What's wrong? Jingwan was puzzled and looked in the same direction. Something's wrong. Judging from the commotion, there should be an assassin at the banquet, Li Hongyuan said calmly. Jingwan's eyes widened slightly. Suddenly, she grasped Li Hongyuan's hand tightly. Something happened when we were leaving the banquet. Will they frame us for this? Things that had been planned out could not be called a coincidence. I'm fine. Li Hongyuan wasn't sure how many assassins there were, and he only brought 2 guards with him. Jingwan's current situation was special. If anything were to happen to her, she would be in trouble. Therefore, Li Hongyuan didn't plan to go over. Jingwan obviously saw through his thoughts. Yuan being late and not being there are 2 different things. I know, but all those people added together can't compare to one of your fingers. I'm very happy to be so loved by you, but if that's the case, I'm afraid we'll be in trouble later. Assassins are not guards. No matter how many there are, they can't be much. At the critical moment, Jingwan's IQ was absolutely online. Li Hongyuan frowned. Then you must follow me closely. Don't worry. Li Hongyuan pulled Jingwan, followed by Gong Mama Heimei and 2 guards. As they got closer, Jingwan also heard the noise. The noise was getting more and more obvious. 2 people suddenly rushed out from the side, and happened to bump into Jingwan and the others. The 2 people were stunned at first, probably because they didn't expect to encounter such a situation. Then, with a fierce look, they put their hands in front of their chests. The daggers, which were blue under the light, were obviously smeared with poison, and were stained with blood. They rushed quickly toward Jingwan and the others. It was not the first time Jingwan had encountered such a situation. She didn't panic, but the hand holding Li Hongyuan slightly tightened. Li Hongyuan's thumb gently rubbed the back of her hand to comfort her. Gong Mama and Hei Mei didn't move, but the two guards went up to them without fear. As a prince, although he could bring two guards into the palace, he was still not allowed to bring weapons. Bare-handed against two assassins with poisoned daggers, he didn't know how poisonous the daggers were. If it was a slow poison, then it was okay. But if it was the kind of poison that killed at the sight of blood, a small wound could cause him to lose his life. Li Hongyuan's two guards were shadow guards. They were better at dealing with this kind of crafty assassination method than traditional martial arts. Although Jingwan didn't understand much, she also found that the two people from the prince's fu had the upper hand. But because of the other party's poisoned daggers, they couldn't let go. Otherwise, they might have already taken them down. The clothes of these two people were too obvious. With just a glance, it could be distinguished. One was a dancer, the other was a palace eunuch from the imperial kitchen. They clearly belonged to the kind of people who looked weak, but at this moment, their moves were unusually fierce. Although the two guards of Jin Qinhuang Fu didn't see blood, but the places where their clothes were cut were not few. In the blink of an eye, they had already fought more than 10 rounds. Soon, Yu Zhongqing chased after them with several imperial guards. When he saw the current situation, he joined in without hesitation. They had swords with them, and they had an absolute advantage in numbers. It was only a matter of time before they could take them down. As Jingwan watched attentively, Li Hongyuan suddenly let go of her hand, grabbed her waist and retreated. Seeing the shining swords chopping towards Jingwan and the others, it turned out that there were also assassins among the imperial guards. When both sides were like fire and water, one of them suddenly turned towards Jingwan and the others. However, the assassin might have thought that they were distracted, but Li Hongyuan never relaxed his vigilance from beginning to end. At this time he only believed in himself, and even divided his attention to his back. In the process of Li Hongyuan bringing Jingwan and retreating, after all, there were two people and their movements were hindered. The other party's blade was getting closer and closer. Suddenly he brought Jingwan to the side, causing the assassin's blade to cut empty air. Then Li Hongyuan kicked the other party's wrist. The blade clearly changed direction, but it didn't fall off. Looking closely, it turned out that the assassin had wrapped the hilt of the blade around his hand. However, Li Hongyuan's kick was enough to break the other party's bones. With severe pain, how could he continue to use the blade? So much so that Li Hongyuan didn't make another move. The assassin only thought that he was being looked down upon. Seizing the opportunity, his other hand reached into his bosom. However, before he could take out the dagger, his eyes suddenly widened in disbelief. Then he met with a pair of cold and emotionless eyes. And the owner of those eyes was actually a middle-aged woman. With unwillingness, the assassin's body softened and fell to the ground. Although it happened quickly, Jingwan also saw clearly that the assassin only paid attention to them. And her husband didn't make another move. Unexpectedly, Nanny Gong suddenly rushed out from behind. It was the first time that Jingwan saw Nanny Gong move so fast. Nanny Gong held the hairpin in her left hand, and her right hand went straight into the assassin's bosom. When the hairpin pierced into the assassin's neck, Nanny Gong changed the direction of the dagger, and directly pierced into his body. Nanny Gong stepped back but didn't pull out the hairpin. It wasn't the first time that she had seen such a scene. For Jingwan it was still a little exciting. However, Jingwan's eyes didn't move away. Looking at the man who was gradually dying on the ground, a pool of blood quickly appeared under him, and the blood from his neck kept flowing out through the hairpin. Obviously, it was caused by the two main arteries being injured in both places. However, wasn't the hairpin's lethality a little too strong? Jingwan suddenly thought of a possibility. What if the hairpin was shaped like a triangular thorn? Jingwan moved her eyes to the place where the hairpin was connected to the assassin's neck. Because of her good eyesight, she could see clearly in the dim light. Sure enough. Commander. A cry of surprise attracted Jingwan's attention. Yu Zhongqing's body fell forward, and his back took a solid hit. However, his reaction was fast enough. He quickly turned around and blocked the second hit. Yu Zhongqing's eyes were cold. Even if the opponent was his brother, he showed no mercy at this moment. Jingwan clenched her fists tightly. It was obvious that there was more than one person in the Imperial Army who was problematic. However, under the circumstances just now, everyone thought that there was only one. The second person suddenly made a move and even attacked them from behind. It was impossible to guard against. Perhaps he knew that it was impossible to succeed in attacking Li Hongyuan and Jingwan, so he chose Yu Zhongqing. The dancer and little eunuch from before were like arrows at the end of their flight. They were quickly taken down. Several Imperial guards turned around to help Yu Zhongqing. Perhaps it was because of anger, the eunuch was directly killed. When everything was over, they all stood there in a daze. However, the good brothers who used to hang around each other's shoulders when they had nothing to do were now unconsciously on guard against each other. They were even at a loss of what to do. Obviously, because of what happened just now, they had become a little paranoid. You are the Imperial Guards carefully selected by the Emperor. You are responsible for the safety of the palace. Look at you now, what are you doing? You were in a hurry before, so you were taken advantage of. Now, can't you tell that the people around you are not your own brothers? Yu Zhongqing did not speak harshly. His voice was still calm. It was also because of this calmness that the Imperial Guards regained their senses and quickly recovered. At this moment, Yu Zhongqing was not very good. He was a little dazed and his body seemed to be a little stiff. He did not feel pain from the wound on his back. Instead, he felt numbness. However, he felt a chill down below. It was also a little sticky. It was obvious that he was still bleeding. If you don't want to die, quickly go to the Imperial doctor, Li Hongyuan said coldly. The others only then realized that Yu Zhongqing was injured. They all became anxious, so they took care of Yu Zhongqing again. The assassins on the ground were thrown to the side. Obviously, they looked like they had recovered, but their hearts were still a little weak. That was why they appeared to be a little out of it. Li Hongyuan looked on coldly from the sidelines. Therefore, from his point of view, although these Imperial Guards looked pretty good, they were still stable in the palace. These people were still lacking in many things. Their psychological quality was not up to standard. Yu Zhongqing naturally understood this as well. However, he was a little powerless right now. Don't worry about me, go take a look. Okay, leave two people here. I will help you deal with it. You should take care of your own life. Thank you, Your Highness. Yu Zhongqing also knew that now was not the time to be brave. If he completely failed this time, he would probably die with grievances. He had not taken his revenge. Li Hongyuan did not care about the two helpless Imperial Guards. He let the guard check the situation of the assassins. Guard Qian squatted down and stretched out his hand to check one by one. Master, they are all dead. These two committed suicide by taking poison. Li Hongyuan's gaze fell on the dancer and the little eunuch. Yes. However, they did not put the poison in their mouths. They took the poison in advance. Li Hongyuan pulled Jingwan away. Clean it up. When they arrived at the place where the banquet was held, the entire place was already in a mess. There were also cries that sounded as if the sky was falling and the earth was collapsing. This was because several young princes and imperial grandsons had died, and countless were injured. The number of people lying on the ground was far more than expected. Although it was impossible to tell who was the assassin and who was the victim based on their clothes, it was still possible to tell from their hands. Moreover, these people basically all had weapons in their hands. Li Hongyuan roughly scanned the area. The number of assassins was more than expected. Adding all of them together, it was already in the double digits. According to the 4 assassins they encountered, there should not be any survivors. However, even so, it was enough to show that there was a loophole in the palace's defense. Regardless of whether the main responsibility this time was Zhongqing's, if he did not die this time, he would lose a layer of skin after this. However, at this time he should be in charge of the overall situation. Where was the person who was fearless and showing the power of heaven? The smell of blood was a little heavy. With the death of those children, Jingwan was clearly seriously affected. She covered her mouth with a handkerchief and wanted to vomit. After all, pregnant people were especially sensitive to smell. Moreover, there was also a psychological stimulation. There were already people at the scene who took the initiative to take care of the follow-up matters. Even if there was no one, Li Hongyuan would only care about his wife at this moment. He took Jingwan and left without a trace of politeness. However, he did not leave the palace. Instead, he took Jingwan to Qin Shufei's Sweet Dew Palace. This choice did not seem to be a problem. Originally, he thought that after such a thing happened, everyone would be in a panic. Most people's first reaction would be to gather together and not be separated. Therefore, Qin Shufei should not be in Sweet Dew Palace. The reality was a little unexpected. Qin Shufei looked to be in good spirits. She should not have been frightened. After learning of Jingwan's situation, she immediately asked someone to bring her some sour plums. Did Sweet Dew Palace just happen to have something like sour plums? Clearly, it was specially prepared for Jingwan. Although he did not know when Jingwan would enter the palace, she might not come to Sweet Dew Palace after entering the palace. However, this was Qin Shufei and Huang Guifei's kind intentions. According to the special relationship between Qin Shufei and Huang Guifei, it could be said that Qin Shufei treated Li Hongyuan as a son. If it was really like this, there was nothing wrong with it. Under normal circumstances, Jin Qinhuang was a man of few words. Therefore, he should not be expected to say anything at this time. He quietly embraced Jingwan and gently stroked her back. Seeing that Qin Shufei did not have any change in expression, Jingwan did not push Li Hongyuan away. She suppressed the nausea and tried not to think about those stimulating scenes as much as possible. She began to ask about the assassins. Today's matter was really too serious. This assassination was obviously carefully arranged. There was a plan, a clear goal, and the method was also sinister. Taking poison in advance, regardless of whether the mission was completed or whether they could escape unscathed, they would undoubtedly die. Without any survivors, there were many things that could not be investigated. This also meant that anything could happen. Realizing the seriousness of the matter, the scene that stimulated Jingwan was also thrown to the side. The eunuchs serving the dishes, dancers, musicians, and assassins seemed to have appeared from all directions. Their main target seemed to be the emperor, but their targets were also the princes. By the time the imperial guards arrived, the situation was already chaotic and the tragedy had already been caused. Qin Shufei's face was a little pale, and she still had lingering fears. Upon closer inspection, her clothes were still a little dirty. She didn't have the time to change, or perhaps she didn't have the strength to change. Thus, the impact on Qin Shufei was more serious than it looked. Jingwan did not urge and waited for Qin Shufei to calm down. Su Guifei blocked a fatal blow for the emperor. If it was not good, I'm afraid that her life would be in danger. The situation was not yet under control, and the emperor hurriedly carried Su Shi to the Jade Essence Palace. The amount of information was huge. Jingwan and Li Hongyuan looked at each other, seeming to have smelled something. Later, it was the Gong Prince who stood up to stabilize the situation, then it was Kong Prince, and then the other princes also competed to show off. Qin Shufei had always been a calm and peaceful person, but at this time, she showed a slightly mocking expression. She clearly saw that those princes, when the assassins rushed towards them, more than once they grabbed the people around them to block, rolling and crawling. Where was the slightest bit of their usual manners? It should be known that all the princes had martial arts masters. When they fought on the martial arts field, they looked like they were skilled, but when it came to the end, none of them stood up to protect their wives and children. Qin Shufei restrained the expression on her face. The imperial concubines were all forced by them to return to their respective palaces. You need to pay attention at that time. The emperor's descendants and the imperial concubines should have been present, but you were the only ones absent. No matter what, those people will put this matter on you, so you must think of a way to deal with it. Whether it was anger or shifting the blame, what Qin Shufei said was inevitable. If it really was Benwang's plan, how could they still be alive? Li Hongyuan said quite conceitedly. Qin Shufei believed his words, but the problem was he couldn't say that to outsiders. If he said it, it would be the same as exposing himself. Jingwan patted him. Be serious. Li Hongyuan looked at Jingwan, then looked at Qin Shufei. I know. Hearing that, this pair of mother-in-law and daughter-in-law both breathed a sigh of relief, choosing to believe 100%. Afterwards, after drinking a few mouthfuls of tea, Luqing Emperor's personal steward hurried over. Nubi greets Xu Fei Nyang Nyang, Wang Ya Wang Fei Nyang Nyang. In this kind of situation, coming to find Jin Qinhuang was definitely a difficult task. Dispense with the formalities. Why are you coming to Sweet Dew Palace now? How is Gui Fei Nyang Nyang? Qin Shufei asked. Answering Nyang Nyang, Gui Fei Nyang Nyang's life is in danger. The emperor ordered Nubi to come see Wang Ya. The head eunuch carefully looked at Li Hongyuan. The emperor asked Wang Ya to call Jin Qinhuang Fu's doctor to immediately enter the palace. Looking at Li Hongyuan, he didn't have the slightest reaction, as if Jin Qinhuang wasn't him. Jingwan glanced at him. It was fine to just casually pretend, but if he was implicated, wouldn't he be tired? I know, bodyguard Qian is outside. Let him make a trip. Gong Gong can return to Fu Huang's side to wait. In case there is a need, he can lend a hand. Jingwan directly made the decision. Yes. The head eunuch's heart was practically filled with tears. Jin Qinhuang Fei was really a good person. After they left, Qin Shufei jokingly said, there are several high-ranking women in the inner palace. Now only Wei Xianfei hasn't been treated by your Fu's doctor. This person is also being raised in Jin Qinhuang Fu. If it was another place, she would definitely have been sent to the imperial hospital by the emperor. Wei Xianfei may not have any serious problems. Even if there is, she probably won't have that life. Jingwan had a slight smile, but her words were particularly cold and ruthless. This caused Li Hongyuan to be somewhat surprised. Qin Shufei stared blankly, but then no matter why she said this, they didn't feel that it was inappropriate. I'm guessing that it won't just be the doctors in your residence. Prince Rui's family will also be entering the palace soon. Who knows, Su Shi might even want to see you. Qin Shufei said faintly. Obviously, if Gui Fei Su didn't grasp such a good opportunity, then she would have lived in vain. Grass would have long grown on her grave, and her bones would have turned to soil. So what if they turned over? If they can step on them once, twice, then they can step on them 3 or 4 times. Li Hongyuan really didn't care much about this matter. What he cared about was that relying on Prince Rui's people, they wouldn't be able to do what they did tonight. https://www.bicken.com/11/118007/147398083. HTML chapter error. Click here to report. No registration required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book. www.bicken.com Bikugo mobile reading website. mbicken.com. Chapter 546. So, who was the mastermind behind tonight's show? Just as she was thinking about this question, Jingwan also asked, does A Yuan have any suspects? There is. If the guess is true, then things may be very interesting. Interesting? A lot of people died. What was there to be interesting about? Or was it that the interesting in someone's mouth was different from the understanding of ordinary people? Compared to his usual behavior, it seemed that the latter was more likely. Jingwan felt that she should prepare to light a candle for someone. Let's not mention this matter for the time being. If Imperial concubine Su makes a comeback, she definitely won't be content with her lot. I don't know what will happen. After being targeted by Imperial concubine Su many times, even though she didn't succeed every time and she herself was unharmed, Jingwan still felt quite annoyed. That was a mask that had been worn for a long time and suppressed for a long time. Once it broke out, it became distorted and perverted. The bargaining chips in Su Shi's hands are basically gone. In the end, she is just trapped in the harem and can't make any waves. Li Hongming went down once, and at least half of the people who were optimistic about him left. At this time, even if those people turned back, Li Hongming would disregard former enmity and be willing to accept them again. However, there is a phrase called settling accounts at an opportune time. Those people are not stupid. How could they not think of this point? So even if they feel that they miscalculated and walked the wrong way, they will still grit their teeth and continue walking. Moreover, they will do everything possible to help their new master and completely kill Li Hongming. No one will like a traitor. We don't have to do anything. After a period of time, Li Hongming will still be in a terrible fix. So to say, this mother and son pair, even if they climbed up again, in fact they were far from the original threat. The head eunuch by Lu Qingdi's side returned not long after. This time, when he faced Li Hongyuan, he seemed even more apprehensive. He stammered and couldn't express himself clearly for a long time. After all, at that time, Jin Qinhuang and Gui Feinyang had completely broken off their relationship. Therefore, now that Gui Feinyang wanted to see Jin Qinhuang, if by any chance she angered Jin Qinhuang, the person who passed on the message would be angered and killed on the spot by Jin Qinhuang. Therefore, he really didn't dare to say it. Why did such a chore always fall on his head? Clearly, there were other people by the emperor's side, sitting in the manager's position and being deeply trusted. Shouldn't he be enjoying limitless glory? He was probably the most miserable chief steward in history. It was said that accompanying a monarch was like accompanying a tiger. This master was not a monarch, but he was even more terrifying than one. At this moment, the head eunuch inexplicably admired the colleague, who had always been by Jin Qinhuang's side. That was a truly capable person. After so many years, he could still live well. He was clearly the emperor's personal manager, but when facing him, he couldn't hold it up. Therefore, shouldn't he not care about these things and instead learn from him? Li Hongyuan tried his best to restrain his temper. However, the path he had chosen made him even more arrogant and reckless. Therefore, he had to endure when it came to important matters. Apart from that, he gave all his patience and good temper to Jingwan. Because Lu Qingdi's chief steward had made him wait for a long time, the teacup had already landed accurately on his head. He screamed, but that sound was swallowed back in a very short time. The hand that subconsciously covered his forehead also quickly moved away. Above his eyes, there was a bloody handprint. Blood was still flowing out, quickly blurring his vision. His body couldn't stop trembling slightly, because of pain and also because of fear. At this time, he didn't dare to hesitate anymore. Like pouring beans, he explained the matter clearly without panting. Li Hongyuan was expressionless. What does Su Shi think Ben Wang is? A kitten or puppy that she can call to come and go as she pleases? Ben Wang and her have already been written off. You bring these words back for Ben Wang. If anyone dares to come again for this matter, I will definitely make sure that they won't be able to return. Li Hongyuan fiercely slammed the small square table at his hand. The square table directly split into pieces. In the end, the head eunuch only had one eye covered. Seeing this, he rejoiced. His legs trembled even more. If this palm hit his body, he reckoned that his little life would be gone. Yes, Nubi will withdraw. Compared to a living king of hell, he was even more willing to face the emperor's anger. In the Jade Essence Palace, which was originally bleak, now seemed to have recovered its former liveliness. However, imperial concubine Su was lying on the bed, her breath hanging by a thread. That knife had directly pierced into her heart, and because of the poison, the blood couldn't be stopped. She used a white cloth to tightly press it down, staining it red one after another. The head eunuch came back to report. Imperial concubine Su might have heard a sound, so she tried her best to open her eyes. Her consciousness was a little blurry. After looking for a while, she couldn't find the figure she was looking for. The tears in the corners of her eyes suddenly rolled down. Your Majesty, Your Honor, is he really not willing to see me again, even if it's the last time? No, Your Honor is a good child, a filial child. Jin will send someone else. Imperial concubine Su smiled bitterly. Yes, Your Honor is a good child. It's me who has let him down. It's all my fault. It seemed that speaking was consuming her vitality, so Imperial concubine Su's face became more and more pale. But I'm just jealous. I clearly love Your Majesty so much, Your Majesty, but Your Majesty only has my sister in his heart. I want to treat Yuan, wholeheartedly, but he looks more and more like my sister. This concubine's heart is like being eaten by thousands of ants and insects, like being fried by a raging fire. It's like this every day and night. I keep telling myself that Yuan is innocent. He's the only one my sister left for your majesty, so I can't. Imperial concubine Su opened her heart. At this moment, she no longer concealed her ugly heart. However, all men had bad natures. No matter how ugly a woman's heart was, if everything was based on her true feelings for him, then their vanity would be greatly satisfied. In this way, it seemed that no matter how big a mistake this woman had made, she could be forgiven. Lu Qingdi was almost in such a state now. He had completely forgotten about the imperial concubine. What's more, as the saying goes, a dying man speaks the truth. Imperial concubine Su still took the knife for him. Lu Qingdi couldn't help but tremble at the thought of this injury on his body. Looking at this injury, she must have risked her life. Therefore, at this moment, whatever imperial concubine Su said was the truth. He only needed to nod and say, Okay. However, imperial concubine Su was obviously a smart person. She wouldn't ask for anything at this time. Even if she really couldn't escape this disaster, she would never ask for anything. What she asked for would erase the kindness. What she wanted was for Lu Qingdi to give it to her willingly. What she asked for might only be one or two things, but what the emperor gave on his own initiative might be unlimited. In order to turn things around, imperial concubine Su really gambled with her life. Rather than being humiliated and waiting to die in the Jade Essence Palace, it was better to die while being remembered by the emperor. Just like that B*TCH Pashur, imperial concubine Su was certain that if she was still alive, the emperor would not have treasured her as much as he did in the beginning. If she had been used properly, perhaps her relationship with the emperor would have dropped to the freezing point long ago. However, she died at that moment and left the deepest mark in the emperor's heart. So much so that the emperor still could not forget her even after dozens of years, and endlessly doted on the B*TCH she left behind. It was a pity that imperial concubine Su realized this a little late. Otherwise, she wouldn't have schemed so ruthlessly in the morning. At least, she wouldn't have let that bastard die. Now she grasped this point and gambled with her life. It would be best if he could survive, but if he couldn't, her son shouldn't have any problems in the future. After going through all the previous things, she believed that her son's temperament would become more mature and cautious. He wouldn't make mistakes easily and wouldn't be caught by others. The throne was within reach. Your Majesty, this concubine knows that you honor will definitely not want to see this concubine again. Your Majesty, there's no need to force him. This concubine is just regretful that I lost my mind and vented my anger on him. Yuan'er is clearly the most pitiful and the most innocent. He doesn't want to see this concubine, and doesn't want to forgive this concubine. It's right. As imperial concubine Su spoke, her voice became weaker and weaker, as if she couldn't continue speaking. This concubine will personally bring that bastard here. There were many reasons why Lu Qingdi doted on imperial concubine Su for so many years, but there was still some affection in it. After all, imperial concubine Su was a woman who could attract many men in all aspects. It was just that imperial concubine Su stepped on Lu Qingdi's reverse scale, so he hated her. Once she grasped Lu Qingdi's mind, it wouldn't be difficult for her to get back. Lu Qingdi was a person who cherished old relationships. It was just that the imperial concubine was too special to him, so it didn't show on others. Imperial concubine Su pulled Lu Qingdi's sleeve. She could have brushed it away with a light flick, but Lu Qingdi didn't dare to use force. No, Your Majesty, don't go. If this concubine dies, Yuan'er will still hate me. Did imperial concubine Su want to see Li Hongyuan? Of course not. If the adopted son whom she finally realized she didn't know anything about really came, the situation she created would be destroyed. She was sure that Li Hongyuan wouldn't see her, so she put on such a show. Obviously, she wanted to see him very much. Now, she had to bear the pain of not seeing him. She created a more stable image for herself, and at the same time, she discredited that bastard. Okay, I'll do as you say. Don't talk anymore. Imperial concubine Su closed her eyes, as if she would never wake up. Lu Qingdi was all kinds of anxious. The imperial physicians were still trying their best to save her, but they couldn't determine what kind of poison it was. They could only use the most conventional methods, which were obviously ineffective. Seeing that the blood was still flowing, Lu Qingdi cursed the quack doctor and kicked him away. He almost ordered people to drag him out and behead him. Li Hongming entered the palace very quickly. He was one step behind Gongjiu, but he arrived at the Jade Essence Palace before Gongjiu. Because he was worried about his mother, he didn't care about anything else and rushed into the palace. After entering the palace, he didn't even get off the horse, which seemed to be understandable. Mother, mother. Li Hongming ran in a hurry, completely disregarding his manners. He seemed to only have Imperial Concubine Su in his heart. He threw himself to Imperial Concubine Su's side, even ignoring Lu Qingdi. Mother, mother, how are you? He reached out his hand carefully, as if he wanted to touch her, but he didn't dare to. He was afraid that the slightest touch would hurt her. Mother, it's your son. Look at me, okay? Mother. The man's tears also rolled down in an instant. It was said that men didn't cry easily, let alone a prince. But at this time, no one would blame him. Lu Qingdi looked at him and felt incomparably bitter. This was the woman he once doted on, the son he was most optimistic about. Lu Qingdi couldn't help but reach out and pat him on the shoulder. Your mother will be fine. Imperial father, Li Hongming's lips trembled, as if he just noticed Lu Qingdi. Your son was rude just now. What time is it now? Why do you still care about manners? Ming. Imperial concubine Su called out in a low voice. She wanted to open her eyes, but her eyelids were like 1,000 gold. Your Majesty, this concubine seems to have heard Ming Er's voice. Mother, mother, it's your son. I'm coming, I'm coming. Li Hongming grabbed Imperial concubine Su. Imperial concubine Su struggled to open her eyes. Before I die, I can see you one last time, mother, mother. Mother, don't talk nonsense. You'll be fine, you'll be fine. Imperial physician. Why don't I see the imperial physician? Imperial father. What did the imperial physician say? What did he say? Why can't I see anyone? Li Hongming shouted hysterically, because talking to Lu Qingdi was like shouting at him. Lu Qingdi didn't mind at this time. There's poison on the weapon. Ordinary detoxification methods won't work. The imperial physician is investigating what kind of poison it is. It's only possible to prescribe the right medicine. Li Hongming swallowed back the words he wanted to say. He clenched his teeth, and the veins on his forehead bulged. Your Majesty, Jin Qin Wangfu's physician has arrived. The palace servant outside hurriedly reported. Why haven't you called him in yet? Lu Qingdi and Li Hongming spoke at the same time. Gongjiu strode in and was about to salute, but Li Hongming grabbed him and pulled him over with all his strength. Quickly save my mother. There were still traces of tears on his face. Gongjiu subconsciously wanted to shake off Li Hongming. If he really did that, it would be easy to do. In the end, he restrained himself. Gongjiu took Imperial concubine Su's pulse, asking Your Majesty to move. This person is about to die. You guys aren't physicians. What's the use of surrounding her? At this time, Lu Qingdi was very obedient. His movements were also very smooth. Gongjiu impolitely sat in Lu Qingdi's original position and spread out the needle case. There was a row of shining silver needles. His finger slid across it, and then he took out one. Just as he was about to start, Gongjiu suddenly paused. Your Majesty, Imperial concubine Nyang has lost too much blood. Some of the blood has coagulated. To avoid causing an impact, we may need to touch Imperial concubine Nyang's body. Men and women shouldn't touch each other. Even if the other party was an old woman, she was still the emperor's woman. So to prevent Lu Qingdi's possessiveness from causing mischief, it was best to make it clear in advance. In the eyes of a physician, isn't there only the patient and not the difference between men and women? Lu Qingdi was very righteous. He just didn't know if it was because, in any case, she was already so old. Even if she was cured, Zhen wouldn't sleep. So what if she was touched by another man? It's not like he was wearing a green hat. Thank you, Imperial Father. Li Hongming was really afraid that Lu Qingdi would give up on the treatment. Obviously, Lu Qingdi's IQ was also online at this time. In any case, he was the savior of Imperial concubine Nyang. If he didn't treat Imperial concubine Nyang because of this, it might be understood from a man's point of view. But from a reasonable point of view, it wouldn't be understood. After getting permission, Gongjiu no longer hesitated. He tore Imperial concubine Su's clothes a little. It looked like a bloody mess and her skin couldn't be seen. Then his left hand felt around the wound, and the silver needle in his right hand steadily fell. Looking at the current situation, it was obvious that the first step was to stop the bleeding. Otherwise, Imperial concubine Su might bleed to death before the detoxification. Gongjiu's silver needle hemostasis technique could be said to be superb. With just a few needles, he easily did what a group of Imperial doctors couldn't do. Then Gongjiu took out the prepared disinfectant alcohol, medical cotton, and tweezers from his medical box. Obviously, these things also came from Jingwan. It wasn't too difficult. Since she said it, Li Hongyuan's subordinates could naturally get it. Gongjiu casually handed it to Li Hongming. Use this to clean Imperial concubine Su's wound. Remember not to touch the silver needle. Gongjiu went to write a few prescriptions and explained it to Lu Qingdi's people. After that, he didn't ask any more questions. Imperial concubine Su's palace maid cleaned her wound, but it was obvious that she had never done such a thing before. Originally, she could hold the embroidery needle as if it was flying, but now, she was clumsy, making people anxious. Moreover, Gongjiu only stopped Imperial concubine Su's bleeding, but he didn't stop the pain. Once the alcohol was applied, the stinging pain caused Imperial concubine Su to groan in pain. Her face was so pale that there was no trace of blood. The palace maid's hands trembled even more, afraid that she had hurt her master. Gongjiu could clearly relieve her pain. During the trauma surgery in the Northwest, he didn't use silver needles to relieve pain. Obviously, it was because the other party didn't get along with her master. He was black-hearted and deliberately did it. He couldn't use other methods, so this was a small matter. What's going on? What is this? Imperial concubine mother wasn't like this just now. Li Hongming grabbed Gongjiu's lapel and questioned him with an unkind expression. Gongjiu rudely pried Li Hongming's hand away. Third prince, please calm down. This is to prevent Imperial concubine Su's wound from becoming red and swollen. It will only increase the pain. Other than that, there won't be any other effect. This is something that can't be helped. He explained indifferently. The way he addressed Li Hongming was purely out of disgust. Li Hongming's face was dark, but he couldn't say anything. He was reduced to a commoner and didn't have a noble title. Under normal circumstances, calling him a prince was already giving him face. The status of a prince was much more honorable than that of a commoner. It was just that Lu Qingdi didn't give an edict to remove his name from the imperial family. However, it was obvious that after Li Hongming fell down he still hadn't learned his lesson. The thing that existed in his bones still hadn't been smoothed out. Otherwise, he should know that he shouldn't easily offend a doctor, especially one who was not under his control but had excellent medical skills. When he needed him, he could quietly kill you. However, there was a trace of doubt in Lu Qingdi's eyes. Imperial concubine Su has never been like this before. Replying to your majesty, Imperial concubine Su has been poisoned by a special kind of snake venom. At first, the wound will be numb, and she won't feel any pain. Only after a period of time will this numbness disappear. Imperial concubine Su has obviously passed that time. This kind of pain is within the range of ordinary people, so your majesty doesn't need to worry. Lu Qingdi nodded and didn't speak anymore. Gongjiu looked at her coldly. You'd better hurry up. Imperial concubine Su's current situation doesn't allow for any delay. Hearing this, the palace maid was also anxious. However, the more anxious she was, the more flustered she became. The more flustered she was, the more unstable her hands were. She almost spilled the wine. The palace maid was so scared that she knelt on the ground. Your Majesty, please forgive me. Your Highness, please forgive me. Lu Qingdi and Li Hongming's faces were gloomy. Scram, useless thing. Gongjiu, it's better if you do it. Yes. He picked up a pair of tweezers, picked up a piece of cotton, dipped it in alcohol, and directly rubbed it on Imperial concubine Su's wound. His movements were clean and nimble, but it was obvious that he wasn't gentle at all. He directly stuffed the cotton into the wound. Li Hongming saw that he was so crude and clenched his fists. Unruly commoner, you have big guts. You actually dare to use underhanded methods. His fist swung out. In his view, Gong Jiu was a person of Jin Qinhuang Fu, so he didn't have good intentions. Gong Jiu dodged and expressionlessly looked at Li Hongming. If you don't clean it up properly, the one who will suffer will only be Imperial concubine Su. How about Wang Ye do it himself? He wasn't a real commoner, so how could Gong Jiu bow and bend his knees? Not only did he have a master behind him, he was also full of confidence. He didn't fear Li Hongming at all. Lao San, wait quietly for Zhen. Don't cause trouble. After cleaning up, Gong Jiu carefully checked Imperial concubine Su's pulse. Her lungs were indeed injured. It wasn't serious, but it was enough to be fatal. Gong Jiu hadn't reached the stage where he could perform internal surgery. Whether Imperial concubine Su could survive or not would depend on her own good fortune. As for the poison, it was secondary. He knew what kind of poison it was and how to detoxify it. As long as he could detoxify it within the effective time, there was nothing to worry about. As for the truth, Gong Jiu also told Lu Qingdi the truth, so that he wouldn't have to take the blame if Imperial concubine Su died. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/147430008. HTML chapter error. Please click here to report. No registration required. We will handle it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com. Bikugo mobile reading website, bicken.com. Chapter 547. Gong Jiu also told Lu Qingdi the truth so that he wouldn't have to take the blame if noble consort Su died. You have the ability to deliberately evade the responsibility, and now you're shirking the responsibility. You really are. Third Prince, Gong Jiu rudely interrupted him. This commoner is only a human, not a god. This commoner only knows a little more than the imperial physicians. If Third Prince still insists that this commoner didn't do his duty, then this commoner will be responsible for detoxifying noble consort Su. As for the rest, Third Prince can find whoever he thinks has the ability. Shameful thing, you really are? I want your life, someone come. This commoner is just a commoner. I am indebted to Jin Qinhuang Yi for thinking highly of me, so I became the physician of Jin Qinhuang Fu. In the end, it's just a lowly life. If Third Prince wants it, just take it. Gong Jiu was not afraid at all. Lu Qingdi only felt a sudden pain in his temples. Someone come, take Zhen away for Prince Rui. Without permission, no one is allowed to enter. But this address, he didn't know if it was a habit or if it had a special meaning. Li Hongming stiffly looked at Lu Qingdi. Zhen will not pursue the matter, because you are worried about your mother. Lao San, so many things have happened. Don't speak so casually until now. Li Hongming's lips trembled, his face dejected as he wiped his face. Fu Huang, this son was anxious and lost his sense of propriety. Just now I was reckless. Dr. Gong, please don't bicker with me. Please take care of Mu Fei. Li Hongming glanced at noble consort Su, who had already fallen into a coma. Perhaps it was useless for him to stand here, and might even add to the chaos. After all, some thoughts were simply out of his control. Temporarily avoiding them might be the best policy. But those who were outstanding in certain aspects would always have some little eccentricities. Even Lu Qingdi's tolerance for these people was relatively high. Relatively speaking, Gong Jiu was just a little stubborn. Lu Qingdi naturally couldn't bear to part with such a talent. Perhaps Lu Qingdi wanted to express his trust in Gong Jiu, so he directly handed noble consort Su to him, and said that as long as Gong Jiu tried his best, he wouldn't do anything even if noble consort Su died. He would deal with the aftermath himself. At the end of the day, Lu Qingdi was still selfish. Although imperial concubine Su had saved his life, it was still far from enough compared to him. After imperial concubine Su was grounded, more than half of the people who used to serve her in the palace were beaten to death. She lost her original lofty status, and it was impossible for the Ministry of Internal Affairs to replace her. Now that Emperor Lu Qingdi left with his people, the Jade Palace became lonely and desolate again. The people who served imperial concubine Su now were only a few palace maids and eunuchs, who were not alert and capable enough. Gongjiu watched silently. He was about to stand up again, but no one took the initiative to curry favor. This was good too. Gongjiu's treatment after that was very casual. To a large extent, it depended on imperial concubine Su's luck. It didn't matter if she could live. Imperial concubine Su's body had suffered quite a bit of damage and was rapidly deteriorating. This time, she had lost too much blood, and the effects were even more serious. Even if she could barely make it through, she would probably have to accompany the empress. If she died directly, it might be too easy for her. Of course, Gongjiu wouldn't go all out just because of this. Leaving the Jade Palace, Emperor Lu Qingdi's worry about imperial concubine Su weakened a little, and he paid more attention to tonight's matter. There were so many assassins in the palace, and he almost fell for it. How could he not be angry? Leading a large group of people, he angrily rushed to the imperial garden. The scene had already been cleaned up, but after knowing how many of his children and grandchildren had suffered, his eyes darkened and he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. However, compared to heartache, Emperor Lu Qingdi was more angry. Where is Yu Zhongqing? Where did he die? Fu Huang, Commander Yu was seriously injured in the process of killing the assassins. He was also poisoned. Now he won't make it. Emperor Lu Qingdi was startled. For a moment, he didn't know how to react. It was as if he had clearly forgotten everything that Yu Zhongqing had done, felt that he was too incompetent, and wanted to vent all his anger on him. Now that he knew that the other's life was in danger, he was like a deflated ball, remembering his loyal past. Immediately send him to the Jade Palace, and let the doctor of Jin Qinhuangfu take a look. Then Emperor Lu Qingdi seemed to have thought of something. What about you? Is there anyone injured or poisoned? Go to the Jade Palace together, and see if it is the same poison. If it is, then cure it together. If there was a way to cure the poison, but they didn't have time to cure it and died, then it really was. And when Emperor Lu Qingdi learned that these adult sons of his, except for Old Seven's arm, were all unharmed, his mood became a little subtle. What Qin Shufei saw, he naturally also saw some. As a father, as a husband, in a critical moment, he didn't protect his wife and children, but instead pushed them out. Those children who died, how many of them died because of their actions? People to seek benefits and avoid harm, this seemed to be their nature. But to really do so, how selfish and cold was that? If it was him, the father, would they also do the same? When he thought of this possibility, Emperor Lu Qingdi's face turned completely black. Without saying anything, he scolded them to their faces. They were simply disloyal, unfilial, heartless and unrighteous scum. They didn't take responsibility at the critical moment. What was the use of having them? Each and every one of them was scolded silly, but no one dared to talk back, even if they didn't feel that they were in the wrong. The matter here quickly spread to the Sweet Dew Palace. Now the people of the Sweet Dew Palace needed to grasp all the things that they could grasp. Jingwan felt that it was quite funny. Emperor Lu Qingdi and his sons were essentially jackals of the same tribe. He was the emperor and there were people who put his life first. Because there were people who blocked the knife, it was easy to stand and talk. If there was no Su Guifei to block the fatal wound for him in time, if there were only palace servants who were scared silly beside him, could he be 100% sure that he wouldn't push people to block the knife? In fact, it was 100% certain that he would. After the event, he might even confidently say that his life was so precious that they were all lowly people who deserved to die for him. On the contrary, it was because they didn't take the initiative to stand up to protect him that they deserved to die. So to put it bluntly, the fault of those princes was not that they pushed people to block the danger that belonged to them, but that they pushed the wrong person. This was the biggest difference brought about by the difference in status. If this kind of thing happened in her previous life, then even if you pushed a beggar, you would be condemned by everyone. The higher the status of the person who pushed people, the more criticism they would receive. But here, if you pushed 100 or 1,000 servants and you were the only one who was fine in the end, the world would take it for granted. Your own life was your own life. The lives of lowly people were like a blade of grass or a stone. Yuan, when are we leaving the palace? No matter when, it was really uncomfortable to stay in the palace. I'm afraid not for the time being. What's wrong? Are you feeling uncomfortable? No, I'm just a little sleepy. Jingwan shook her head. Then go sleep in the side hall for a while. Tonight's matter won't be over so easily. You might not be able to sleep for the whole night, Qin Shufei said. Jingwan nodded. Thank you, Your Highness. She accepted Qin Shufei's kindness. Li Hongyuan followed her. The two hugged each other and slept in their clothes. Jingwan slept in Li Hongyuan's arms. Her breathing quickly became light and long. Li Hongyuan was originally a little worried that she would be frightened, but now he was relieved. Pulling the thin blanket on his body, Li Hongyuan also closed his eyes and pretended to sleep. His mind was thinking about tonight's matter. According to the current situation, he was slowly unraveling the situation bit by bit. Everything had a purpose. The bigger the matter, the stronger the purpose. According to Qin Shufei, it seemed to be to assassinate Lu Qingdi and the princes. The final result looked very tragic. Lu Qingdi was fine, and the princes were also fine. After killing so many people, it seemed to be purely killing people on sight. Those who ran fast were fine, and those who ran slow deserved it. It shouldn't be like this. Then looking at it from another point of view, whoever lost in this assassination would benefit. The matter was very clear. The only person who benefited was Imperial concubine Su. Although she saw that she had sacrificed herself, and it didn't seem like she was resting, the world didn't lack people who would gamble with their lives. If you want to achieve great things, you have to be more ruthless than others. When necessary, you have to be even more ruthless to yourself. Then the problem returned to the original point. According to Li Hongyuan's understanding, with the current power of the Su family and Li Hongming, they wouldn't be able to carry out tonight's assassination. It wasn't that they didn't have a way to get people into the palace, but that they didn't have such well-trained assassins. Even if they had the Minister of Personnel, Lord Su, whom Li Hongyuan didn't have any impression of in his previous life, secretly helping them, it was unlikely that they could achieve this step. Obviously, there were still things he didn't know. Regarding this, Li Hongyuan wasn't vexed. Although he had the ability of clairvoyance, and held an advantage, the things he knew were limited after all. Moreover, due to the long period of time, it was normal for him to be negligent and forget. Thinking about it, Li Hongyuan entered a semi-hazy state until someone knocked on the door outside. Li Hongyuan opened his eyes. Wan, wake up. Now he was worried about leaving Jingwan here alone. What's wrong? Jingwan was still sleepy and in a daze. There should be something outside. I just remembered. After that, we'll go back to the prince's mansion to sleep. Oh. Jingwan obviously hadn't woken up yet, and was a little dazed. Li Hongyuan asked someone to fetch warm water for her to wash up a little and wake up. When Sister He and Mammy Gong served Jingwan, Li Hongyuan learned about the situation from eunuch Mu. Lu Qingdi mobilized all the men of the blackguard to replace the imperial guards, besieged the imperial kitchen and the musical house, and arrested and detained all the people inside. The imperial guards were also guarded. Then a large-scale search was carried out, and those who were close to the assassins were basically unlucky. Later, during the search, they found many corpses. Only then did they realize that they were people who had been replaced by assassins. When they turned back to look at those assassins, it turned out that they were all in disguise. Their technique was actually not very good. As long as they got along with people for a long time, their acquaintances would be able to tell that something was wrong. Therefore, these people took advantage of the time, and took advantage of the fact that people in several places were busy tonight to take advantage of the time. Where these people came from, and how did they enter the palace? There was no way to find out. There were no suspicious places found at all the gates of the palace. Of course, if they said that they didn't find anything, they were shirking the responsibility. It was not the first time that something happened in the palace. The emperor's birthday the year before last was also left unsettled. Lu Qingdi didn't believe it. He gave Li Suyan a strict order to investigate to the end. If there was anything suspicious, they were all taken back to the prison of the blackguard for interrogation. In this way, when Lu Qingdi arrived at the Sweet Dew Palace, it was almost 4 hours later. As an emperor, he was suspicious by nature. Although he didn't suspect Li Hongyuan, Lu Qingdi still asked a few questions instinctively. Li Hongyuan's face was cold. He was very cooperative, but his expression was too sarcastic. The fact that Lu Qingdi could still stand properly was a testament to his tolerance. But now he was being mocked by his son. No matter how high his tolerance was, he couldn't help but fly into a rage. Li Hongyuan didn't budge at all. In the end, Qin Shufei and Jingwan had to work together to stop the war between the father and son. In the end, get out of here. Lu Qingdi pointed outside. Li Hongyuan couldn't ask for more. He took Jingwan and quickly left. Seeing him so straightforward, Lu Qingdi's anger rose sharply. Previously I said so much, but he didn't listen. Now he seems very obedient. He was waiting for me here, right? Ah, this evil creature. Your Majesty, please calm down. Qin Shufei gently stroked his chest to help him calm down. It's not like Your Majesty doesn't know that His Highness has such a temper since he was young. He can't bear any grievances. Tonight, it was just a coincidence that the couple left the banquet. Your Majesty didn't suspect anything. But now that you asked, he's definitely unhappy. Moreover, His Highness seems to be angry with Your Majesty. This concubine doesn't know why, but with these two things added together, he's going all out against you. His Highness is a straightforward person. Everything is on the surface, but there's no twists and turns in his heart. After being comforted by Qin Shufei's soft words, Lu Qingdi's anger dissipated a lot. Thinking about his evil creature son, since he was young, when was he as obedient as his other sons? He was already used to it. If he suddenly became very obedient, he would be worried. So in the end, he could only sigh helplessly. Qin Shufei didn't ask anything. She just waited on Lu Qingdi to sleep with the palace servants. After Lu Qingdi fell asleep, Qin Shufei dismissed the palace servants. She sat quietly on the edge of the bed and looked at Lu Qingdi. The other party was frowning. Obviously he didn't sleep well. Qin Shufei's expression didn't change, but her eyes didn't have the previous warmth. She was still a peaceful and beautiful person, but with a bit of coldness. Qin Shufei sat for a while. She stood up and walked to the window. She looked up at the full moon in the sky. It should have been a family reunion and a day of celebration, but such a tragedy happened. She didn't know how many people died and how many were injured. She didn't even dare to ask. It should be the happiest time in an ordinary family. But in the imperial palace, the more it was like this, the more likely it was to cause all kinds of trouble. If it was light, there would be hidden mockery. If it was serious, there would be all kinds of framing. Moreover, because of this, the people with the most noble status were gathered together. So Qin Shufei actually disliked all kinds of festivities. The more beautiful it was, the more tragic it would be after something happened. Because of his relationship with Gong Jiu, Li Hongyuan knew more than Lu Qingdi. Although Gong Jiu was still in the Jade Essence Palace, he always had a way to bring the news out. For example, after the detoxification, Yu Zhongqing didn't even frown when the wound extended from his shoulder blade to the back of his waist. Li Hongyuan looked at the 2-finger-wide note. The snake venom came from a special kind of poisonous snake in the territory of the former Wei. The former Wei. Li Hongyuan murmured these 2 words. This gave him a good direction. For Li Hongyuan, this was a good clue. However, when Lu Qingdi knew about this, Wei Xianfei would be in trouble. Even if she knew that this matter was unlikely to be her doing. Wei Xianfei was trapped in Qiyuan Imperial Palace, and the only people she could trust were the maids who had served her before. She was absolutely isolated from the outside world. However, who asked her to be the princess of the former Wei? Now that there was an assassination at the Mid-Autumn Festival, there were clues pointing to the former Wei. Therefore, when Wei Xianfei was bored and was dressing up in front of the mirror, Lu Qingdi angrily rushed in, grabbed Wei Xianfei, and slapped her. Wei Xianfei turned over and hit the dressing table. Coincidentally, the tip of a hairpin was pointed at her flesh, while the other side was against the makeup box. The tip of the hairpin pierced directly into her flesh. Wei Xianfei's originally delicate skin and tender flesh was so painful that her face almost twisted. However, after being in the imperial palace of Qiyuan for almost 2 years, Wei Xianfei's pride was almost worn out. Therefore, even if she was angry, she didn't dare to show it. Your Majesty, what did I do wrong? Why are you so angry? She was very pitiful. The poison on the weapon of the assassin last night came from the former Wei. What do you want to say? Lu Qingdi grabbed her neck and asked gloomily. Wei Xianfei was alarmed. Your Majesty, this concubine doesn't know. I really don't know. Ever since I entered Qi Yuan Imperial Palace and became Your Majesty's concubine, everything about this concubine is under Your Majesty's eyes. How could I do anything? Moreover, since this concubine is Your Majesty's concubine, then even if Qi Yuan and the former Wei had a war, this concubine would definitely stand on Qi Yuan's side. Your Majesty, you have to believe this concubine, Your Majesty. Lu Qingdi's face was still gloomy and cold. At this moment, the little prince in the cradle suddenly cried. Lu Qingdi was startled, and his hand unconsciously loosened a little. Wei Xianfei's eyes flashed, and she saw the hope of escaping this disaster. Emperor, for the sake of our child, can you believe this concubine? This matter really has nothing to do with me. I'm your woman when I'm alive and my soul belongs to the Qi Yuan when I die. I will never be disloyal. Lu Qingdi glanced at the cradle. It was his youngest son. His heart was moved, and he threw Wei Xianfei away. This matter had better have nothing to do with you. Otherwise, when I find out, I'll skin you alive. Humph. Wei Xianfei fell to the ground and didn't get up for a long time. At that time, she refused to go to the Xiongnu for peace and stayed in the Qi Yuan. She thought that at least there was a life of luxury here. Look, this was her life of luxury. She was clearly the legitimate princess of the Wei dynasty. She grew up being pampered. If she stayed in the Wei dynasty and got a husband, she would still be surrounded by attendants. The palace servant stood at the door with a cold expression, as if he didn't see Wei Xianfei's embarrassment. This was the current situation of the Yihe Palace. It was also the coldest and most ruthless reality. There was no support, no favor, and anyone could step on her head. Wei Xianfei had been angry before, but she was only ridiculed in return. The appearance of an assassin at the Mid-Autumn Festival was a big matter. It wouldn't be hidden, and it couldn't be hidden. Those who were well-informed got the news last night. Today almost everyone knew. The first reaction of the officials was to wonder who was so audacious. Some people might whisper that imperial concubine Su was lucky. She happened to come across the merit of saving the emperor, and was able to turn the situation around. More people thought that it was a conspiracy theory. The simplest way of thinking was that whoever benefited was the mastermind. However, this kind of thing couldn't be said easily. There was no evidence, and it might anger the emperor. Therefore, the key now was to find out the truth of this matter. It was best for those who had nothing to do with it to be a bystander, and not to interfere. Of course, this was only on the surface. There were a lot of things to do in the dark. The most basic point was to use all the channels that one could get information to understand the matter in detail, as much as possible. This was to prevent other things from happening. When they were caught off guard, if something fell on their head, it would be even more unjust. Following a master like Jin Qinhuang, there were many more benefits. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/147431010. HTML chapter error. Click here to report. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com mobile edition reading website, mbicken.com. Chapter 548. As for what happened at the Mid-Autumn Festival Palace banquet, only a small number of people were affected. The others continued to live their lives as usual. It was just one more topic to talk about. After all, it involved the royal family, and more than one member of the royal family had died. When discussing this matter, it was relatively obscure. With just a few words, it didn't stir up as much waves as most of the gossip. Of course, it looked calm on the surface, but if this matter was related to some official, then there would be a bloody storm after the investigation. At that time, the panic would spread over the capital for at least 3 months. Not many people would be able to ignore the matter, as if it had nothing to do with them like it did now. Well, the premise was that it could be investigated. What if it couldn't be investigated? The matter was done so meticulously. Whether the assassin completed the task or not, he would die. Therefore, it was more likely that it couldn't be investigated. However, there were no absolutes in the world. There might be a twist at any time. In the palace, imperial concubine Su was tenacious. Gong Jiu only treated her according to the usual methods, and didn't do his best. She survived. Perhaps there was too much hatred and unwillingness in her heart. Her desire to live was too strong. On the night of the Mid-Autumn Festival, the former Princess Rui, Lady Lu, also followed into the palace. She brought her 3 daughters with her. Princess Haong found her grandson. Although all the trouble was caused by the father of the baby girl in her hands, the child was innocent. Princess Haong wasn't a psychopath. She returned the child safe and sound. Now Lady Lu kept a close watch on the 3 children. At home, no matter how angry Li Hongming was at her, she was indifferent. To put it bluntly, she was a typical case of a dead pig not afraid of boiling water. However, if Li Hongming tried to touch her children, just wanted to get close to them, Lady Lu would go crazy in seconds. She would fight with Li Hongming like a mad dog. Having seen this more than once, Li Hongming's face was so dark that ink could drip out. However, he had no power and influence. Lady Lu's father was still an elder of the inner pavilion. He still wanted to rise up, and he still wanted the Lu family's help. Therefore, he couldn't do anything to Lady Lu. However, Li Hongming had never been a magnanimous person. If he really ascended the throne, Lady Lu would definitely not have a good end. Lady Lu took care of noble consort Su. If it was in the past, she would probably do it herself. But now, she just sat there like a wooden stake. She didn't even move her mouth, let alone move her hands. Not to mention that the Jade Essence Palace was fully staffed now, and the rewards from Emperor Lu Cheng were flowing like water. Even if it was just a miserable situation before, Lady Lu wouldn't help. It was almost time, so she went to see the children. Although noble consort Su was injured and not sick, and Lady Lu rarely let the children appear in front of noble consort Su. When the children were around, Lady Lu was obviously much gentler and angry. Noble consort Su was so angry that her heart, liver, and lungs hurt. However, being angry could only increase the burden on her body. She could only suppress her anger. She used to be satisfied with Lady Lu, but now she was as dissatisfied with Lady Lu as she was with Jingwan. However, Lady Lu was stubborn now. Similarly, if anyone dared to use her children, she would still dare to make a scene in the palace. Therefore, in the end, noble consort Su could only be like Li Hongming. Lady Lu saw this and sneered in her heart. In the past, she was too stupid and had too many misgivings. That was why she was tightly controlled in the palm of their hands. Now, even if she knew that she might be at the end of the road, she didn't care. First, she would let herself be happy. When the time came, she would just take the 3 children with her. In any case, if she died, the 3 children definitely wouldn't have a good life. Although she was reluctant, she had no other choice because Lady Lu was very clear that even if she lowered herself like before, she wouldn't have a good life in the future. Besides, Lady Lu felt that she might not be at the end of the road. As long as Li Hongming couldn't sit on the throne, the 4 of them still had a good chance of survival. The new emperor would deal with Li Hongming and wouldn't touch them. Firstly, it would show the new emperor's benevolence. Secondly, her 3 children were all girls and wouldn't pose a threat to the new emperor. On the surface, Lady Lu tried her best to set up a protective wall for the children, but in her heart, she kept thinking about how to find a way out for them. It would be great if she could gain the favor of the new emperor first, and get a protective talisman for them. That's right. Now, as long as she could exchange the safety of the 4 of them, Lady Lu wouldn't hesitate to betray Li Hongming. Unfortunately, she counted her fingers and thought over and over again, but she didn't think that any of them had a high chance of becoming the emperor. The emperor clearly had so many sons, and it seemed that they all had some ability, but they weren't outstanding. She used to think highly of Li Hongming, but he failed miserably time and time again. He was the first to fall. It was obvious that he was useless. It was this kind of situation that was the most difficult to bet on. However, this kind of thing was different from other things. She couldn't cast the net too widely. Otherwise, if she was careless, she could lose her life in advance. If Li Hongming found out, he could kill her directly without caring about anything else. Princess Lu looked more and more like a lifeless wooden stake, but she was very anxious in her heart. Li Hongming had been restored to the title of prince, but he hadn't arranged any work for the time being. Lady Lu had also been restored to the status of princess. Prince Rui's mansion had also been restored to its original size, and the necessary things had been moved in. However, Princess Lu accidentally found one thing. Now Prince Rui's attitude towards concubine, Su, seemed to be a bit strange. He was concerned about her, but there seemed to be something else. Princess Lu quietly observed and thought carefully. Finally, she understood the key of the problem. Our Prince Rui still resented his biological mother. He resented her for not dying directly. Thinking about it, if concubine Su died directly, then all the credit of saving the emperor would be compensated for Li Hongming. If she died directly, Lu Qingdi's feelings for her would be even deeper. Every time concubine Su was mentioned intentionally or unintentionally, Lu Qingdi would think that concubine Su exchanged her life for his. Whether it was out of guilt or out of kindness, Li Hongming would inevitably benefit, just like Li Hongyuan. If she died, Li Hongming could immediately return to the imperial court, instead of taking care of the sick in the Jade Essence Palace. When a prince's mother died, he didn't have to worry about his mother. He was in a hurry now. If concubine Su was in her previous state, she would be of great help to Li Hongming. Li Hongming wouldn't be like this. The problem was that concubine Su's current state could be seen by anyone with discerning eyes. After she recovered, she would be equal to a disabled person. Therefore, it was not as valuable as dying directly. Princess Lu sneered in her heart. No matter how Li Hongming behaved on the surface, he was cold-blooded and selfish in nature. He put his own interests first. She wondered what concubine Su would think if she knew it. Would she be sad and disappointed? Or would she be gratified and kill herself to help him? After all, this son was taught by her hand. Unfortunately, concubine Su was asleep when Li Hongming showed this trace on his face. Otherwise, with her keen senses, how could she not notice her son's abnormality? Princess Lu wanted to watch a show. She hoped that a good mother-in-law would find out or a man would say it directly. At that time, it would definitely be a good show. However, the chance to see it live was not big. Li Hongming and concubine Su were not stupid. It was impossible for them to expose this in front of a third person. The court was not calm. The adult princes were fighting openly and secretly. This time, their attitude was surprisingly consistent. They tried to pin the mastermind on Li Hongyuan. Li Hongyuan was still the same as before, but his incomparable position in Lu Qingdi's heart was the biggest threat. This kind of inference without evidence was naturally untenable. What was more, Li Hongyuan had already expressed his attitude in front of Lu Qingdi. Li Hongyuan made it clear to Lu Qingdi that he didn't care if Lu Qingdi suspected him or stripped him of his title. He didn't have time to explain or pay attention to anyone. However, Lu Qingdi fell for this trick. It was said that once a person's heart was biased, he would see everything with a filter. Li Hongyuan grew up as a scoundrel. In Lu Qingdi's eyes, he was a straightforward and well-behaved child. Once the first impression was the strongest, Lu Qingdi would definitely be unhappy when other princes slandered Li Hongyuan. Not to mention, on the night of the Mid-Autumn Festival, Lu Qingdi was quite disappointed with their performance. So they didn't dare to pretend to be pitiful by losing a child, to gain sympathy. If they really dared to do so, Li Hongyuan wouldn't do anything to them, but they would suffer. In the end, those who still wanted to put the blame on Li Hongyuan were stopped by Lu Qingdi's unfilial and unfilial. They didn't dare to say more. Originally, many people were worried about Li Hongyuan. However, he didn't do anything, and Lu Qingdi had full power to uphold justice for him. Well, they were worried for nothing. The power of bias was really extraordinary. As for those who didn't like Li Hongyuan, they could only stomp their feet in anger once again. Jin Qinhuang's position in the emperor's heart is unshakable. Even if it is shaken, those who want to kill him will be consigned to eternal damnation even faster. Rather than saying that the emperor is biased towards Jin Qinhuang, it's better to say that the emperor is protecting the other princes to a certain extent. Now it's just that the emperor is still holding up, and Jin Qinhuang is too lazy to move. If the estimation is correct, Jin Qinhuang's wings are full, his claws and teeth are sharp, and he can brazenly attack at any time. For some things, as long as you pull out a thread, you can pull out a longer thread. Although it was just the tip of the iceberg, it was enough to frighten people. To deal with a person like Jin Qinhuang, one couldn't act blindly without thinking. If one moved, one must hit with one blow. Otherwise, one could be gnawed until not even bones were left. Therefore, one must be patient, cautious, and thorough. Sun Yilin spent the Mid-Autumn Festival with the Luo family and the Luo family. It could be considered as experiencing the happy atmosphere of family harmony. However, that kind of happy mood couldn't be maintained for too long. Because, after all, the Luo family wasn't his home. Tidying up the few things he had, he prepared to leave the capital. Just at this time, someone came to the Luo family's door. Moreover, it was a girl, and she specifically asked to see Sun Yilin. Sun Yilin was originally playing chess with Luo Jinghua, and Sun Yijia was watching from the side. Hearing the news from the door guard, Sun Yijia looked at her elder brother with astonishment and ridicule. Her fifth brother owed a romantic debt outside. This was really too rare. Sun Yilin's brows wrinkled. Sun Yijia looked, afraid that it wasn't something pleasant. She originally wanted to open her mouth and tease him a bit, but now, fifth brother, why don't I have someone send her away? A girl who wasn't related to him came to look for a man. It was very easy for them to never see such a person again, let alone send her away. Sun Yilin looked at Sun Yijia with a little astonishment and disapproval. Little sister, she's just a girl. It was easy to send her away, but even easier to destroy her. How could you be so cruel? Sun Yijia was speechless. Didn't I do it for you? I thought that someone was pestering you. It turns out that my good intentions were treated as ill intent. Her brother's temperament looked gentle, but he was actually very cold, especially towards insignificant people. Now that he had changed so much, he was no longer gentle even on the surface. Could it be that he was gentle in his bones now? Sun Yilin rubbed between his eyebrows helplessly. These days, the siblings had spent more time together, and Sun Yilin's emotions had finally eased. He was no longer as stiff and emotionless as before. However, this was the first time that his emotions were so obvious. Sun Yijia was really curious now. Bring her in. The other party had never been to the capital before, and was unfamiliar with this place. They couldn't just ignore her. She was quickly brought in. When they were still a distance away, Sun Yijia could feel her joy from her gait. However, when she got closer and saw her brother's expressionless face, she immediately became cautious and nervous, as if she was afraid that she would upset her brother. This girl wasn't very beautiful. Her face was a little round, but she looked quite likable. She had a good upbringing. Sun Yijia guessed that she might be from a big family. Her eyes were very clean. It could be seen that either she was open-minded and didn't like to be calculative, or her living environment was relatively simple. If she was really from a big family, she would belong to the former. Also, her eyes obviously showed that she liked her brother very much. It was very pure, and she didn't seem to be affected by her brother's current appearance. Sun Yijia's heart skipped a beat. Yilin. Min Xiaoyuan, Sun Yilin interrupted her. You only brought a servant girl and a nanny. How dare you come all the way to the capital? Do you know what you are doing? You are a girl. What if you are in danger? His tone was unspeakably strict. Naturally, there was also concern that he didn't notice. Sun Yijia saw this and some thoughts in her heart became more and more obvious. Min Xiaoyuan lowered her head and unconsciously tugged at her handkerchief. Then she lifted her eyes and carefully looked at Sun Yilin. I also brought my brother's attendant and a coachman, she said softly. Sun Yilin choked. Obviously his heart was blocked. His eyes turned, and it looked like he was about to roll his eyes. Sun Yijia snorted and laughed out loud. She hurriedly covered her mouth with her handkerchief, and then acted as if nothing had happened. She didn't do anything. Please ignore her. You can continue. Luo Jingbo was also drinking tea at this time. The husband and wife had a tacit understanding. Their eyes met through the edge of the quilt, and they smiled tacitly. But surnamed Min? Was she a girl from the Min family? Sun Yilin glanced at them and didn't say anything. Is this the main point? Min Xiaoyuan also looked at Sun Yilin and Luo Jingbo. If she guessed correctly, they should be Sun Yilin's younger sister and brother-in-law. She had already asked around about Sun Yilin. But if he didn't introduce her, she couldn't just run up to them. Moreover, her main point now was to make Sun Yilin let her stay. Then what's the main point? Didn't you say that I didn't bring enough people? Min Xiaoyuan revealed a sense of naivety and doubt. Sun Yilin was a little discouraged. Obviously, this wasn't the first time this happened. You shouldn't have come to the capital. When Min Xiaoyuan heard this, the rims of her eyes became a little red. Her hand that was tugging at her handkerchief was a little pale. Sun Yilin reflected on himself if he was too straightforward. However, there were some things that he couldn't do and couldn't promise, so he shouldn't drag it out. However, this girl seemed to have a one-track mind. It wasn't the first time he had rejected her so straightforwardly, but he didn't see any signs of her backing down. Miss Min, chasing after a man without telling your family is not something a lady from a respectable family should do. Not only will your family be worried, but if others find out, not only you, but your parents and elders will also be pointed at. Your sister's reputation will also be tarnished because of your actions. Whether you're selfish or willful, you shouldn't. Young master son. The old servant behind Min Xiaoyuan finally couldn't listen to it anymore. Sun Yilin glanced at her coldly and continued to speak, ignoring Min Xiaoyuan's pitter-patter of tears. I've told you long ago that it's impossible between us. Not to mention that I'm all alone now with no official position, title or property. How can I afford to raise a pampered girl like you? Even I have never thought of marrying. So go back to where you came from. Don't cause trouble for others, do you understand? This was the first time Sun Yijia heard her elder brother speak so bluntly. It was too much to say this to a girl. Moreover, this girl didn't seem to be thick-skinned. The fact that she followed him to the capital was probably the most outrageous thing she could do. Even if she wanted to reject him, she should at least be more tactful. Fifth brother. Little sister, this is my business. Don't butt in. Just mind your own business. Sun Yilin tilted his head and said coldly. Sun Yijia was obviously angered by him this time. She put down the cup in her hand on the table. Fine, I don't care. Do whatever you want. This time, Luo Jingbo had a headache. Pregnant women had a strange temper. It was fine if his wife wasn't angry, but once she got angry, he might not be able to coax her back even if he tried his best. Brother-in-law, you shouldn't trick me like this. Min Xiaoyuan wiped her tears. I've disturbed you today, young master. I'll leave now. As she spoke, she left directly. She was very straightforward, but her whole person exuded a sense of stubbornness. Young miss. Min Xiaoyuan's servant called out worriedly. Let's go. Why are you staying here? You'll be annoying. Min Xiaoyuan quickened her steps. Min Xiaoyuan's behavior was surprising. She chased after him from so far away, but she gave up so easily. Only Sun Yilin felt his head hurt even more. Little sister, send someone to find out where they're staying. They're new to the capital and will be easily bullied. Fifth brother, didn't you tell me to stay out of your business? Why are you looking for me? Sun Yijia said coldly. Little sister. Sun Yilin said helplessly. This girl was born in the Min family. Her grandfather and the head of the Min family are cousins. Their family is doing well. She's the daughter of the main wife, so she should have a good marriage of equal status. She shouldn't be involved with me. I don't know my future, and I don't want to get married. Don't you understand? Fifth brother, when did you meet her? 2 years ago. Although Sun Yilin didn't know why, he still answered truthfully. Do you know how old she is now? Sun Yilin's face stiffened. 18. Sun Yijia sneered. Obviously, you've already delayed her. We're all from aristocratic families. You know very well what aristocratic families are like. When you met her, she was already 16. What do you think the chances of her not being engaged are? The fact that she's still with you now means that her marriage is obviously over. Not many men in aristocratic families can decide their own marriages, let alone a girl. It takes a lot of courage and determination to fight against her own marriage. If she doesn't do well, her family would rather kill her. The fact that she's still standing in front of you, other than the fact that her parents should be kind and doting on her, she's definitely sacrificed a lot herself. However, she's still full of vitality, which means that she has no regrets about her sacrifice. She may be rebellious, but she dares to pursue her goals. Even if you reject her, at least you shouldn't use words to hurt her. Everyone can criticize her, but you can't. Furthermore, if a pampered girl were to meet a man who had lost her heart outside, how could her family turn a blind eye to that man? But why do I feel that you haven't interacted with her family? This means that Miss Min stopped her family from looking for you to avoid causing trouble for you. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/1479058. HTML. Please click here to report an error. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. Please wait patiently after reporting and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Bikugo mobile reading website, bicken.com. Chapter 549. Sun Yilin rubbed his aching temples. He didn't know about these things, but it was indeed very likely to have happened. It was indeed extraordinary for a girl from an aristocratic family to be able to express her admiration, and it required great courage. When he was in the capital, there were many girls who liked him. Their expressions were all obscure and reserved, and they were always full of tricks to please him. However, sometimes they were nondescript and annoying, and some of them were as clingy as Li Ruyu. Although Min Xiaoyuan ran to the capital with him, in fact, he didn't meet Min Xiaoyuan many times. She didn't give people the impression that she was clingy. Even if she knew what he liked, she wouldn't pretend to know if she didn't know. Instead, she would share some interesting things with him. Sun Yilin had to admit that every time he met her, although the time was short, it was actually pleasant. After returning to the capital, it wasn't that he never went out. Thanks to his brother, his current image was very recognizable. Occasionally he would meet girls who used to admire him, and their eyes would be filled with obvious disgust. Also, because he was no longer a member of Ding General Manor, they would deliberately mock and ridicule him with the people around him, as if the fact that they used to like him was a lifelong shame. Of course, he happened to meet such a reaction, but it didn't mean that all girls were like this. From this point of view, Sun Yilin was actually quite unlucky. Min Xiaoyuan wasn't like that. When they first met, she didn't know his identity. Later on, she didn't change at all. In order to reject her, he told her clearly after he was adopted. Min Xiaoyuan said, "I like you, not your family background. It doesn't matter if you are the son of Duke Ding's mansion or not." And when she knew that he had an accident, she rushed over immediately. She didn't dislike him, but only felt distressed. He didn't care about himself or his health, but she was worried and sad. Sun Yilin had a good impression of Min Xiaoyuan, but to him, this was all he could do. He couldn't go any further. Sun Yilin also knew that Min Xiaoyuan was a good girl. If she hadn't met him, she might have married the husband her parents chose for her step by step and had children. She might not have a vigorous life, but she might have a plain happiness. Because he had met her, his life might have changed beyond recognition. Sun Yilin had never thought of accepting Min Xiaoyuan, so his attitude had always been very clear. However, this girl was also very stubborn. She had a feeling of, "It's your business if you don't accept me, but it's my business if I like you." After all, she was a girl. He couldn't be rough with her, right? Moreover, she also abided by etiquette and rules and would not go overboard. Therefore, Sun Yilin had no choice but to let her be and never pay attention to her matters. But now, some things had been clearly pointed out by his little sister. Originally, he hadn't forced Min Xiaoyuan to do this, so he couldn't be blamed for ignoring it. However, it was obvious that he couldn't be indifferent. Sun Yilin was born with a silver spoon in his mouth. Many people revolved around him. No matter what others did, he didn't feel anything. The only thing he felt guilty about was probably his own mother. Duchess Ding fell ill at the beginning because of him. However, because the relationship between mother and son was too stiff at that time, he only wanted to stay away from that family. The guilt were suppressed in the bottom of his heart. When his mother passed away, he didn't get to see her for the last time. The emotions that were suppressed in the bottom of his heart finally burst out. But in essence, Sun Yilin still didn't regret it. Now there seemed to be one more person who made him feel guilty. What kind of Sun Yijia did Sun Yilin want to see the most? Of course, he wanted to let go of Sister Wan, marry a lovely wife, and give birth to a lovely child. Not to mention wealth and glory, at least he would be happy and healthy. He couldn't let go of Jingwan's first awakening of love. Other women, no matter if they were good-looking or talented, couldn't move him at all. Even if they did something stupid for him, he might even ridicule them in his heart. Now Min Xiaoyuan appeared. At least it made him hesitate. Sun Yijia felt that there was hope, so she was willing to help him at an appropriate time. More importantly, it could only depend on their fate and luck. This time, I'll take her with me when I leave the capital. I'll send her home directly and explain it to her family in person. I'm sure that after understanding my situation, her family will definitely be reluctant to let her suffer with me. Sun Yijia's anger, which had calmed down, flared up again because of Sun Yilin's words. At this moment, she didn't say anything and directly left. She could do whatever she wanted. She really didn't care. Brother-in-law, why do you have to do this? Luo Jingbo was helpless. Think about it carefully. I'll go and see Yijia. He patted Sun Yilin's shoulder and chased after Sun Yijia. Luo Jingbo was now in the Hanlin Academy. There weren't many things to do, but there were many people who came to curry favor with him. Even when they met Mu Xiao, they couldn't stop. He felt that it was quite hard for him. Luo Jingbo saw Sun Yijia sulking and pulling the leaves of the flowers. Don't pull. Be careful not to prick your hand. The flowers had thorns. You men are all bad, Sun Yijia said angrily. Luo Jingbo was dumbfounded. What was this about? Besides, his brother-in-law was doing it for the good of Miss Min. How did he become a bad person? What do you mean? Please enlighten me. You probably still think that fifth brother is doing it for the good of Miss Min, right? Sun Yijia's voice was cold. Has he ever considered Miss Min's feelings? When Princess Kong was still alive, my father, mother, and the Empress betrothed me to Prince Kong. They also said that it was for my good. Was it for my good? Miss Min obviously wants to hang herself on him. He sent her back and wanted her to marry someone else. Was it for her good? Was it for her good? It turned out that she was angry because she thought of what had happened to her in the past. Yijia, you can't generalize everything. Your situation was different from Miss Min's at that time. You got together for the benefit of both parties. Miss Min obviously has good parents, although it's possible that her parents didn't know what to do with her and simply left her alone. Brother-in-law didn't want Miss Min to suffer with him. Besides, brother-in-law has a knot in his heart. Although Sun Yilin did not show it, they actually felt it. If he had really let go, it was still okay to casually ask about the situation of the person he used to like. But because he did not mention a word, it was as if he did not know such a person. So it was obvious that he still remembered, and it might even evolve into an obsession. Sun Yijia also knew that she was being a little paranoid. However, her heart ached and she was anxious. It was true that he had a knot in his heart. However, it was pure nonsense to say that he did not want Miss Min to suffer because Sun Yijia believed that as long as her elder brother was willing, he could still have enough wealth on his own. Don't worry. Brother-in-law is a man after all. He knows what he is doing. Besides, it's hard to say when it comes to love. Maybe he will get over it and think it through. Then he can be with Miss Min. Wouldn't that be better? Miss Min is already 18 years old. How can she delay it any longer? To others, she is already an old woman. They will definitely pick and choose her. Miss Min is also unwilling. When brother-in-law really thinks it through, he probably won't care about Miss Min's age. What if he can't think it through? What if he refuses to marry her? What if Miss Min insists on waiting for him? Won't it really ruin Miss Min's life? It's fine if her brothers are willing to support her. But what if they are not willing? She will be a Buddhist monk? Or they will simply force her to marry someone. At her age, she can't be the first wife, second wife, or concubine. She will be despised and controlled by others. What if she is more stubborn and hits the wall? Luo Jingbo looked at his wife, who was getting more and more agitated. Her thoughts were really far off. Ijia, take it easy. Take it easy. You can't think of the worst, can you? In any case, Sun Ijia felt indignant. Miss Min is not the only one in this situation. I don't see you like this with other people. Other people? Do they have anything to do with me? Do they have anything to do with fifth brother? This reason was very strong and he was speechless. His wife was really becoming more and more upright. She was becoming more and more intimate and reasonable. She used to be such an arrogant person, and the model of a noble lady. Now the shadow of this noble lady was fading. In a few more years, who knew what she would become? However, this was also very good, wasn't it? Min Xiaoyuan, who had left the Luo family, originally wanted to shamelessly stay at Sun Yilan's place. However, she was not thick-skinned enough. Now she was a little annoyed. Why did she run away after being provoked by him? Wasn't he just trying to drive her away? He let her have her way so easily. It was even more inappropriate for her to go back now. However, it was her first time in the capital, so she naturally had to take a good look around. At least, she could barely comfort herself that she was disappointed and pleased at the same time. Min Xiaoyuan didn't bring many people, but she still had enough money. After all, she was the daughter of a noble family. Due to her habit, she naturally wouldn't go to places where ordinary people frequented. This woman's exuberant desire to shop existed in every era, and Min Xiaoyuan was one of them. Coincidentally, Jingwan was also shopping these days. She was purely out for a walk, not to buy anything. Of course, if she saw something that interested her, she would buy it. The carriage followed behind her, and if she was tired, she would sit in the carriage for a while. Because she didn't want to disturb the people, she used a normal carriage. The curtains on both sides of the carriage were hung up. She sat in the carriage with Li Hongyuan and talked about the more interesting people and things along the way. Miss Min? Yuan, is that Miss Min? The one who was with Pei Xiuying in Jiangnan? Li Hongyuan looked in the direction Jingwan pointed at and narrowed his eyes slightly. Probably. Li Hongyuan's people had almost finished investigating Sun Yilan's incident in Jiangnan. Of course, he knew about Min Xiaoyuan. However, Li Hongyuan didn't find out what he really wanted to know. Sun Yilan was injured in a big fire, but that was before he returned to the capital. It wasn't the reason for his change in temperament at all. Some of his previous experiences seemed to be relatively normal. This result was not what Li Hongyuan wanted, but it was within his expectations. Even people who were watched day and night would have things that others didn't know, let alone investigate a person's experience in the past 2 to 3 years when no one was watching. There were only a few thin pages in the message, but if the experience of 2 to 3 years was written down in great detail, it could probably be written into a magnificent masterpiece. A few pages and a book thicker than a brick. Any difference between a few pages and a book that was thicker than a brick could be the reason for the unforeseen event. It didn't matter if they couldn't find out. Sun Yilan would be watched in the future. Send someone to take a look. Is it her? Because of the close relationship between Madame Min and Madame Pei, although there were still many officials, they were still restricted. There were no members of the Min family in the capital. Min Xiaoyuan was still dressed as a girl, which obviously ruled out the possibility of her coming to the capital with her husband. Therefore, Min Xiaoyuan's appearance in the capital was a little strange. As for Madame Min now, she wanted to walk out of Madame Pei's influence and return to the imperial court, so she sent someone to the capital to mediate. However, Madame Min had already submitted to Li Hongyuan, and was Li Hongyuan's spy in Jiangnan. When Li Hongyuan ascended the throne, they would naturally have the opportunity to enter the imperial court. Although she didn't hear what the servant said, she brought the person over. It was obviously the person she knew. Jingwan got off the carriage. Min Xiaoyuan was also quite surprised to see Jingwan. The last time they met was more than 2 years ago. At that time, she was 15 and the other was 16. Compared to now, there was a big change. Jingwan's eyesight was very good to be able to recognize her by accident. To be honest, Jingwan only knew that her surname was Min, and didn't remember her name. "Greetings, Your Highness." "No need to be so polite. Miss Min, did you come to the capital with your elders to play?" Jingwan smiled. Min Xiaoyuan was a little embarrassed. She really couldn't say that she ran thousands of miles with a man. If she didn't do it well, she would be mistaken as eloping. Although she was going all out for Sun Yilin, and some people thought that she had lost face when she did this, but in this unfamiliar place, she still wanted to save some face for herself. Even if it wasn't for herself, it was for Sun Yilin. She also knew about Sun Yilin's current situation. She had been in the capital for 3 days, and she had been understanding Sun Yilin's situation. If there was another elopement, it would only make the other party's situation worse. "No, there's something," Min Xiaoyuan said vaguely. Jingwan nodded understandingly and didn't ask any more questions. Then they chatted casually for a while. Jingwan asked about Min Yuhan's recent situation. She found out that Min Yuhan was doing well. Jingwan actually felt a little regretful. For the imperial noble consort, she might be more willing to see Min Yuhan than Lu Qingdi. Of course, there were some situations where it was better not to see each other. It had been 20 or 30 years, and they had almost forgotten each other. Suddenly seeing each other again might be tearing open the wounds of the past. They weren't very familiar with each other, so they quickly parted ways. Jingwan looked at Min Xiaoyuan's back as she walked away. "She's 18 and still not married? I don't see any traces of mourning on her body. Does she have a hidden illness? Or did something happen? Wan, are you that curious? If you want to know, you can get someone to investigate. Even if you're curious, you don't have to know. This is her private matter." Jingwan waved her hand and walked into a nearby shop. As a result, Jingwan missed the opportunity to know something. Min Xiaoyuan was in a good mood. Meeting someone she knew in an unfamiliar place was a bit like meeting an old friend in a foreign land. The bad mood caused by Sun Yilin's attack was a lot better. Hence, Min Xiaoyuan started to shop. She accidentally bought too much and forgot that she wasn't in Jiangnan. She couldn't carry the things and was a little embarrassed. "Mama, why didn't you remind me? I saw that you were happy. Besides, it's not much. You don't have to worry about it. I don't want to buy any more. Let's go back." Min Xiaoyuan reached out to take something, wanting to share the burden. "Miss, this is not something you should take. I've told you many times. You obviously can't take it anymore. It doesn't matter if I take something less expensive. Give it to me. It's okay." Min Xiaoyuan thought of something and a blush appeared on her face. She lowered her volume. "Yilin's situation isn't very good now. When I get married to him in the future, I can't always be surrounded by people. I'll just take it as familiarizing myself with him. When the time comes, it might be just me and him shopping together." She felt happy just thinking about that scene. The mama sighed. Silly girl. Nothing was set in stone yet, and she was thinking so far ahead. With Sun Yilin's attitude, even if he persevered, who knew how long it would take? However, when she thought of what her miss had done for Sun Yilin, she couldn't bear to pour cold water on her. She was really afraid that she wouldn't get what she wanted in the end, and what would become of her. His anger towards Sun Yilin was equal to how much his heart ached for his Mississippi. Sun Yilin was already in his current state, yet his miss still didn't change her heart. It was already his great fortune that his miss still dared to speak ill of his Mississippi. Even if he knew his true motive, it was still unforgivable. In fact, if Sun Yilin readily accepted it now, this nanny would definitely be unhappy. Her miss likes you. Who are you to deserve it? Speak, did you seduce my miss? You're asking for a beating. What, you say you don't like my miss? Bastard, my miss is loved by everyone. How dare you not like my miss? You're asking for a beating. The mood of protecting the calf, was so subtle. The people sent by Sun Yijia followed Min Xiaoyuan all the way. When they returned, they reported to Sun Yijia. Sun Yijia was too lazy to listen and directly sent them to Sun Yilin. No matter how much she cared, it was useless, so why bother? Sun Yilin listened patiently and carefully. Only when he heard that Min Xiaoyuan had interacted with Jingwan, his expression changed slightly. In fact, Sun Yilin had heard Min Xiaoyuan say that she had interacted with Jin Qin Wangfei before. This was also a kind of fate. Sun Yilin didn't have any opinion about Min Xiaoyuan buying some unrealistic things. He might be short on money now, but he didn't put money in his eyes. When he was rich, he spent more. When he was poor, he spent less. It was just that. He wouldn't think that other people shouldn't spend money recklessly because of his own conditions. Only at the end, when he heard that Min Xiaoyuan and the others had gone to the medicine shop, his brows slightly furrowed. Go and ask, who among them is sick? He suddenly felt a little worried because when he thought about the time Min Xiaoyuan entered the capital, it seemed that it was much later than him. The servant girl who went to ask was also astute. She didn't look for Min Xiaoyuan, but the people around her. After all, if that Miss Min was sick, then for some reason, she might not tell the truth, but the people around her were different. The person who was sick was indeed Min Xiaoyuan. She fell sick on the way to the capital, vomiting and having diarrhea. They were originally rushing, but in the end, they were delayed for more than 10 days. On the third day, it was the most serious and she almost lost her life. Until now, she still hadn't recovered. The reason why they traveled while sick was to see Sun Yilin earlier. Sun Yilin couldn't stay any longer, and directly went to the inn where they were staying. Min Xiaoyuan was bored to death, and was thinking about what excuse to use to see Sun Yilin again. In the end, Sun Yilin himself came to find her. This made her extremely happy, her eyes sparkling. Yilin, you're here. She wouldn't ask why he was looking for her. If there was nothing, he could look for her. Sun Yilin sized her up. He didn't notice before that her face didn't change much, but her figure had at least 2 shadows. As expected, she had suffered greatly. At this moment, he couldn't bring himself to reprimand her. Pack your things and come stay with me at the Luo residence. It was convenient to find a doctor to take a good look at her. Min Xiaoyuan's eyes brightened even more. Wait for me for a while. Seeing her so happy, Sun Yilin rubbed his temples again. Obviously, things had exceeded his expectations. He had originally planned to leave tomorrow, but now he had to postpone it. At least, he had to wait for her illness to recover before he could set off. The Luo residence had another guest, so naturally, no one had any objections. Old Madame Luo nodded, keeping her opinions to herself. The Luo residence's doctor took Min Xiaoyuan's pulse and looked at the prescription used previously. There were no changes. However, when Min Xiaoyuan found out that Sun Yilin knew that she was sick and allowed her to stay at the Luo residence, she originally thought that he was starting to accept her. Her happy mood dropped a few degrees. Yuan, think about it this way. My 5th brother is also like this because he cares about you. 5th brother is actually very cold. It's not easy to get him to care about you. Sun Yijia smiled. Really? Min Xiaoyuan instantly became happy again. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/147906557. HTML chapter error. Click here to report. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book. www.bicken.com Bicken.com mobile edition reading website. Bicken.com. Chapter 550. Sun Yijia comforted Min Xiaoyuan and saw that she was happy and carefree. To be honest, at this moment, she hoped that she could get what she wanted. However, this matter was not up to them to decide. In the end, it still depended on Sun Yilin's thoughts. In Sun Yijia's opinion, even if there was another person in one's heart, it would not prevent them from getting married. Although it might be a little unfair to Min Xiaoyuan. How many congenial couples could there be in the world? She believed that even if Min Xiaoyuan knew about her brother's situation, she would still be willing. The feeling of liking someone and wanting to be with that person might not be obvious before she married her husband. Although she was moved at that time, it was not very obvious. However, after they got married, Their feelings grew stronger day by day. She understood that as long as she was with the person she loved, even if it was just sitting quietly, she would feel happy. Therefore, she believed that even if Min Xiaoyuan's heart was sour, she would still be willing. After they got married, they would become the closest person. After a long time, it might not be impossible for the clouds to part, and the moon to see the moon. She was afraid that her brother would be stubborn, and would not be willing to get married for the rest of his life. However, Sun Yijia also knew that if her brother really thought it through so easily, perhaps he would not be like this now. Some people looked very transparent, and could see everything clearly. However, once it became an obsession, it might be harder to forget and harder to let go than anyone else. Although Min Xiaoyuan was temporarily staying with the Luo family, she basically did not see Sun Yilin. Sun Yilin was deliberately avoiding her. His reason was very clear. Men and women were different. Min Xiaoyuan could not do anything. Moreover, she was in someone else's house. If she did something inappropriate and affected the family's integrity, she would become a sinner. Therefore, she did not insist on looking for Sun Yilin. Instead, she spent more time with Sun Yijia. She wanted to know more about Sun Yilin's past from this sister-in-law. Sun Yijia did not hide anything. She told her a lot of things, big and small. She even bluntly revealed some embarrassing things about Sun Yilin when he was young. Min Xiaoyuan laughed uncontrollably. He has always been a gentleman. Sometimes I even wonder if he deliberately put on a poker face when he was young, like an adult. I didn't expect him to be so naughty. After laughing, she felt a little longing. Why didn't they get to know each other earlier? If only they had known each other earlier. Fifth brother used to play with me when we were young. At that time, I felt that I liked fifth brother the most. However, as I slowly grew older, fifth brother became more and more dull and boring. Sun Yijia talked nonsense without blushing or skipping a beat. She was very restrained by her mother when she was young. She had to learn everything. When she could not walk properly, the rules were already carved into her bones. In the eyes of the elders, she was chaste and virtuous. In the eyes of the other little people, she was the real dull and boring one. Now she had the nerve to frame everything on her brother. She was just certain that Min Xiaoyuan would not go to her brother to verify it. Besides, even if her brother found out, she did not care. What could he do to her? When it came to her brother, even if she did not have anyone to support her, she was still very confident. She then talked about Sun Yilin's preferences. Compared with those antiques, calligraphy and paintings, fifth brother's favorite is flowers and plants. When he was still in Ding General Manor, his courtyard was full of all kinds of precious flowers and plants. The layout was also very good. It was really beautiful, especially when the 4 famous peonies gathered together. When they bloomed, they were especially beautiful. I could take anything in his courtyard, no matter what it was, but I was not allowed to touch those flowers and plants. I remember one time when I deliberately broke a flower of his, but in the end, he fell out with me and even slapped my palm fiercely despite my begging for mercy. He even slapped me hard. Although she was talking about it casually for Min Xiaoyuan to hear, these things also evoked beautiful memories of Sun Yijia. At that time, she felt that Ding General Manor was beautiful. Now there was nothing in that place that she was nostalgic about. When Sun Yijia came back to her senses from her memories, she saw that Min Xiaoyuan was a little dazed. She was completely devoid of the joy from before. Puzzled, she asked, "What's wrong with Yuan Yuan?" Min Xiaoyuan looked at Sun Yijia as if she was about to cry. When we were in Jiangnan, I once gave him a pot of clivia. I felt that it was very compatible with him and he would like it. However, he rejected it very clearly. He said that he did not like flowers and plants. At that time, his expression was not fake, and I believed it without a doubt. Sun Yijia frowned slightly. To be honest, she really did not know about this. After all, when she got married, her fifth brother had not encountered any misfortune. In fact, there were still some precious flowers and plants that had not been recorded in her dowry. Her fifth brother had repeatedly reminded her to take good care of them. After that, a lot of things happened. However, Sun Yijia and Sun Yilin had very little contact. She really did not know when he started to dislike the things that he used to like the most. Sun Yijia wondered if it was because of Sister Wan. Sister Wan also liked flowers and plants. Moreover, she was very proficient in this aspect. She always raised better flowers and plants than others. She also knew a lot of methods that others did not know. However, it did not seem right to think this way. As the saying goes, love a house, love its crow. Since he could not let go of it in his heart, he should like the things that they both liked more. It could also be a way to express his lovesickness. Or was it because it was too painful to look at things and think of her, so what the eye did not see, the heart did not grieve over? Maybe he doesn't like it now. People like different things as they age. That's very normal. It's just that after I got married, I rarely saw him, so I don't know. You don't have to take it to heart. Sun Yijia pretended not to care and said, "Is that really the case?" Min Xiaoyuan asked uncertainly. Min Xiaoyuan was just a little more open-minded. She did not like to fuss over many things, but it did not mean that she was stupid. Moreover, she was always particularly sensitive to the people she liked. Therefore, Min Xiaoyuan actually faintly sensed that Sun Yilin might have someone in his heart. It was also because of this that he was still unwilling to accept her. Of course. Sun Yijia nodded very affirmatively. However, she was a little nervous. She felt that this matter must not be known to Min Xiaoyuan. She always felt that if she knew, this stubborn girl who refused to let go might give up. When there was no one in her heart, she could summon up the courage to pursue. However, if the other party was clearly in love with someone else and still refused to give up, then she would really be belittling herself. Everyone had their own pride. As for those who came from aristocratic families, their education philosophy was superior to others. Although it didn't mean that they looked down on ordinary people, it was just that they had stronger pride and self-esteem. Min Xiaoyuan was already at her limit by sticking to Sun Yilin because she liked him too much. However, there were some things that could not be hidden forever. Therefore, Min Xiaoyuan would know about it sooner or later. However, Sun Yijia was clear that it was not now. She would not know from her mouth. It should be when there was room for reconciliation between them, and let that good brother of his tell Min Xiaoyuan personally. At that time, her brother should have also let go. At least, there would no longer be a demon in his heart that would cut off all possibilities in the future. Sun Yijia felt that they should create time and space for them to cultivate their feelings. Obviously, Luo family was not a good place. It was better to let them leave the capital as soon as possible. When the time came, no matter how much they avoided, they would still have a chance to meet. Knowing the reason for Sun Yilin's delay in leaving, she had an idea. Turning around, she sent someone to Jin Wangfu to invite the Jin Wangfu's physician over to take her pulse. She felt a little uncomfortable. When Jingwan found out that Sun Yijia wanted to invite Gong Jiu to the Luo family, she was shocked. She thought that something big had happened. After all, under normal circumstances, no one in the Luo family would invite the Jin Wangfu's physician over. Now the reputation of the Jin Wangfu's physician was very big. The nobles in the palace had already cured several of them. She did not see them inviting Gong Jiu into the palace just because they had a headache or fever. Therefore, where did the Luo family get such a big face to invite the Jin Wangfu's physician over every few days? Then Lu Qingdi would definitely be unhappy. However, Jingwan looked at the servant girl who came to invite Gong Jiu. Her expression was calm and there was no trace of panic. This was not an expression that a big matter should have. Therefore, after thinking about it, there should be something else. Jingwan cared about most of the Luo family. Therefore, she wanted to go back and take a look. However, there was still no progress on the Mid-Autumn assassination. The court was not peaceful. At this time, it was not a good time to go back. Therefore, Jingwan's heart could only be at ease. Letting Gong Jiu make a trip was the same. As long as it was an order from Li Hongyuan or Jingwan, Gong Jiu would naturally obey. Even if he was a beggar, he would not feel strange just because he had treated the emperor's illness. People like them would always treat their master's words as their first priority. If their master wanted to treat, then they would treat. If their master did not want to treat, then they would definitely not treat. When Gong Jiu felt the pulse for Sun Yijia, he was in front of Min Xiaoyuan. Min Xiaoyuan originally wanted to leave, but Sun Yijia stopped her and asked her to sit for a while. Gong Jiu felt the pulse very quickly. Sun Yijia's condition was good, so he did not find anything unusual. However, he still reminded Sun Yijia of some things according to his duty. After he diagnosed Jingwan's pregnancy, Gong Jiu did a lot of work in this aspect. He was about to be promoted to the master of gynecology again. Not only Sun Yijia, but also the servant girls and nannies beside her listened carefully. Although she was pregnant for the second time and had experience, she still had to pay attention to what she should pay attention to. Dr. Gong, please take a look at this girl. She just came to the capital city and fell seriously ill on the way. Now she has not recovered fully. It has been a long time. It will be better if she doesn't have any permanent disease. Sun Yijia said so. Gong Jiu understood that this was the real reason why the third young mistress of the Luo family invited him over. He nodded in agreement. Gong Jiu felt the pulse for Min Xiaoyuan. Indeed, it had been a long time. She had not recovered fully and her body was still a little weak. Where is the previous prescription? Let me take a look. Min Xiaoyuan's servant hurriedly went to get it. Gong Jiu took the prescription and looked at it. He crossed out 2 herbs and added 3 more. He also changed the dosage of 2 herbs. One of them was increased and the other was decreased. Then he wrote a new prescription. Take this prescription. You will be cured by tomorrow. Then continue to take it for 2 more days. This prescription is for recuperation. You will be fine after taking about 3 prescriptions. The other thing is for food. Gong Jiu briefly mentioned some taboos. Min Xiaoyuan's mammy received the prescription like it was a treasure, and thanked Gong Jiu profusely. Gong Jiu's words were indifferent and calm, but few doctors dared to say that it would take a long time to see the effect of the medicine, and it would take a long time to recover from the illness. He didn't think much about it, but others could feel his strong confidence when they heard it. People who came from the prince's mansion were confident because of their strength, not because of their conceit. So even if he was young, they didn't dare to look down on him. Gong Jiu replied with a few words and returned to the prince's mansion to report to Jingwan. Gong Jiu was no longer a hidden guard. He put all his attention on art and research. Because he had met Min Xiaoyuan in Jiangnan, hidden guards had a special ability to remember people, so he knew Min Xiaoyuan's identity at once. But now the things outside had nothing to do with him, so he didn't know her relationship with Sun Yilin. He just reported it to Jingwan. Min Xiaoyuan, who should have nothing to do with the Luo family and Sun Yijia, lived in the Luo family. Sun Yijia even made an exception to invite Gong Jiu over. How could Jingwan not feel strange? She could not ignore other people, but since it was related to the Luo family, she could not ignore it. Naturally, she sent people to find out the truth. At this time, Sun Yilin also knew what his sister had done. Facing Sun Yijia, he remained silent. Sun Yijia was furious when she saw him like this. What was worse was that she could not read his emotions at all. Naturally, she could not guess what he was thinking. Fifth brother, we know what you're thinking. There are some things that I can't be bothered to say to you. Anyway, as long as you can think clearly even if I don't say anything. If you can't or don't want to think clearly, then it's useless for me to say anything more. Therefore, you'd better take care of yourself. You can leave the capital in 2 days. It's quite annoying to see you like this. I'm pregnant now, and can't see you. So, I don't have to worry about you. Sun Yilin looked at Sun Yijia. After a while, he said softly, Little sister, there are some things that can't be changed. Okay, I'll listen to you. I'll leave the capital with Miss Min in 2 days and send her home. Take care of yourself. Without saying anything else, he got up and left. Sun Yijia frowned. She felt that there was a hidden meaning in her fifth brother's words. She felt a little uneasy. Jingwan soon found out what she wanted to know. After a moment of surprise, she was quite happy, because the information given to her was flat and straightforward and expressed the matter clearly. It led to a point where she could associate the information with the relationship between the characters based on the literal information. Therefore, in Jingwan's eyes, Sun Yilin had finally let go of her and found his true love. Of course, she was happy to see this. Sun Yilin was young and promising. It couldn't be better if he didn't hang on to her. As for her husband, he didn't have to be jealous. It was really good for everyone. Then Jingwan reflected on her reaction. When she saw him at Ding General Duke's mansion last time, she seemed to have overreacted. He had known Miss Min for a long time, and had already let go of her at that time. She thought too highly of herself. When they met again in the future, they could naturally greet each other. However, Jingwan neglected one point. If they really liked each other, why didn't Sun Yilin and Min Xiaoyuan get married? However, even if she thought about it, she probably thought that there must be obstacles because of the gap between their status. Jingwan happily shared the new news with Li Hongyuan. She almost told Li Hongyuan clearly that he didn't have to be jealous in the future. Li Hongyuan smiled, but there was a little unfathomable in the depths of his eyes with a little coldness and indifference. He touched Jingwan's face and thought that his wife was getting more and more silly. There's another one. Hey, don't make trouble for no reason. Jingwan glared at him unhappily. Chen Jingmin was now about to be a father. Of course, it was definitely not Li Ruyu who was pregnant. It was one of his concubines who had wanted to climb into his bed in the first branch of the Chen family, Madame Luo's elder brother. Now she finally got what she wanted. In fact, Li Ruyu's situation had not been good. Li Ruyu had lost the title of Commandery Princess, and Commandery Prince Cheng's mansion was getting worse and worse. Chen Jingmin had already graduated from the Hanlin Academy. Taking advantage of the shortage of people in the Ministry of Revenue, he directly climbed to the 5th rank of the secondary class. Logically speaking, it was not a problem for him to directly divorce Li Ruyu. In fact, it was easy to find a reason, but he didn't. Obviously, Chen Jingmin was now not as simple as before. Li Ruyu ruined his marriage, so he wanted Li Ruyu to stay in hell for the rest of her life, and live a life worse than death. In the end, Chen Jingmin and Sun Yilin were different. He was the hope of the family, the pillar of the family. He had the mission of carrying on the family line. He could not bear to let the elders sigh all day long and his mother and grandmother wipe their tears from time to time. Furthermore, after he had intimate contact with Li Ruyu, there were some things he no longer had the right to covet. After thinking it through, his body became somewhat unrestrained. He had 3 official concubines as roommates, and the number of Tongfang could not be counted with one hand. However, no matter how his body was, his heart was getting colder and colder. The so-called etiquette could not change his mind at all. After he was done, he directly threw up his hands and left. Not to mention any intimacy, when he left, his clothes were not even messed up, and the clothes of the woman he did it with were also not much messed up. According to their thinking, there was no caressing before. It was simple and crude, and they directly entered the main topic. Not to mention kissing, they did not even hold hands. Regardless of whether it was a concubine or a tongfang, it was the same. Why were there so many tongfang? It was because the concubines could not bear his attitude. It was not enjoyment, it was suffering. If they did not want to suffer, they naturally found someone else to replace them. In terms of peace in the backyard, Chen Jingmin was also ranked at the top. Chen Jingmin's attitude was just to complete a mission. The way he conducted himself was more and more like a qualified scholar official. If no one deliberately stopped him, then Chen Jingmin would definitely be a qualified minister in the future. Speaking of these things, how did Jingwan know? Li Hongyuan could isolate the people around him, but could he isolate Madame Luo? Of course, Madame Luo only knew about Chen Jingmin's situation. It had to be said that old Madame Luo was also sighing. This change was really too big. Obviously, Chen Jingmin had become a scum in Jingwan's eyes. However, it had nothing to do with her. Sometimes, perhaps because of external forces, the original path was forced to change. In fact, it was actually up to oneself to decide how to go on. One had made a choice, so one had to be responsible for one's own choice. If Jingwan still felt guilty because Li Hongyuan schemed against Chen Jingmin and gave him a wife like Li Ruyu, after listening to Madame Luo's words, the guilt disappeared. She did not pay attention to it at first. At that time, she directly told Madame Luo that Li Ruyu was just a relative of the Luo family, and there was no need to deliberately say anything to her. It was boring. After Chen Jingmin's incident, Li Hongyuan actually did not care much about him, because he knew best what kind of people his wife particularly disliked. Chen Jingmin was probably embarrassed to think about Jingwan. Sun Yilin indeed left the capital with Min Xiaoyuan 2 days later. It seemed that he had nothing to do with the people or things in the capital, at least in the short term. But in fact, was it really so? Most of the time, it was really too early to make a conclusion before reaching that step. There was no news about the assassin, and Lu Qingdi's temper became worse and worse. Thinking about it, because he could not find out anything, he was very insecure in the palace now. Not only was Yu Zhongqing, who had not recovered from his injury, punished by Lu Qingdi, but Li Suyan also did not get off easy. It should be known that Li Suyan had never made a mistake before. This time, she was also severely punished, which made people more or less nervous. However, half a month later, Li Hongyuan received news that the people who were watching Sun Yilin had lost him. Yes, together with Min Xiaoyuan, Li Hongyuan's people had completely lost track of him. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/148200944. HTML. Please click here to report. No registration required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com. Bicken.com mobile version reading website. Bicken.com. You're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.